A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshop21. Summary. Percy Weasley was born different from his siblings, but his world completely changed when he was 1.5 years old, and then it changed when he was 3.5, which is when Percy's life will change for the better. Percy was born in 1992. Chapter 1. Background and First Year. Safe House, England, April 1st, 1994. 5-year-old Bill, 3-year-old Charlie, and 1.5-year-old Percy were staying with their uncles Gideon and Fabian, while their mom was at the hospital with their father to deliver their new brother or sister. The Pruitt brothers were enjoying the fun with their nephews. Uncle Fabian, look at Percy, says Bill, as the brothers look at their youngest nephew, who was controlling water. Well, Bill, that just proves that Percy is very special, says Gideon to his nephew. They were having fun with one another until an alarm sounded in the house. Fabian, get the boys to safety. I'll hold them off, says Gideon, as his brother grabs Bill and Charlie, but forgetting little Percy. Several Death Eaters entered the house, and at the head of the group was Bellatrix Lestrange. Look at that, a wee little Weasley, says Bellatrix with her signature cackle. Diffindo, she cried with her wand pointed at Percy, but he turned towards her and the curse went across his eyes. Instead of crying, Percy summoned some water and it encased Bellatrix. Fabian and Gideon witnessed this, but they were too late to notice the bright green spells headed straight for them. They were killed in the presence of their youngest nephew. The Death Eaters left after unfreezing Bellatrix, with Bill and Charlie entering the room. Pain set in for Percy, as the brothers noticed that their brother's once green eyes were a milky white now. Let's go to St. Mungo's, says Bill as he grabs the flu powder, but before they could leave. The Order of the Phoenix arrived. They saw the damage. Come along, boys, we will take you to St. Mungo's to be with your parents, says Minerva. Lads, what happened? Asked Alistair to the boys. Uncle Fabian took us to his room, but he forgot purse, says Charlie. So, Uncle Gideon told us to wait, but I snuck out to watch. Bellatrix struck Percy with Diffindo, but he turned his head and it cursed across his eyes. Percy didn't cry, but he controlled the water, and he froze her in a block of ice, says Bill proudly, as he held Percy safely in his arms. Come along, lads, says Minerva, as she and Albus brought her brothers to St. Mungo's. The healer confirmed that Percy was blinded by the curse. It had destroyed his optical nerves, but Albus assured Molly and Arthur that Percy would be allowed to attend Hogwarts when he was older. When the Weasleys returned to the Burrow, Molly made the arrangements for her twin brother's funeral. Their twin sons, Fred and George, were given their uncle's names for the middle name. Percy was pushed to the side, and he was mostly raised by Bill and Charlie, because Molly and Arthur had little to no time for him. That is until March 1st, 1996, when Percy was 3.5 years old. His mum was at St. Mungo's to deliver another sibling, which would make 6 kids. Bill, Charlie, Fred and George went to their Aunt Muriel's, but she refused to take Percy. So, instead, Arthur sent Percy to go stay with his squib sister, Beryl Grace, and her 2 kids, her 2-year-old son, Jason, and her 9-year-old daughter, Thalia. A few days after Percy arrived, Beryl decided to take them on a picnic. Beryl was holding Percy's hand when she placed Jason on the step of a ruined foundation. What? Something, says Percy. And Beryl is shocked because Jupiter and Zeus spoke those to her, meaning that Percy was Roman and Greek. When Thalia was running away from home, she grabbed Percy from his bed, as well as his family picture and his stuffed blue whale. Something Long Island sound something stitched into the whale. Let's go, and we can run away together, says Thalia, as she carried Percy until she met a boy named Luke, and together the 3 of them became a family with one another. Then, in Richmond, Virginia, they meet a girl named Annabeth Chase. Percy, how did you lose your eyesight? Questions Annabeth curiously. When I was a year and a half old, my parents left my 2 older brothers and I in the care of our family while they went to the hospital, when a woman by the name of Bellatrix Lestrange and several other Death Eaters, she threw a curse at me which destroyed my eyes, says Percy. He remembers the day clearly when they stopped at the American Diagon Alley in Washington, D.C. Percy got a wand as well as several spellbooks. His purchases were paid using Vault 3, which was the largest vault in Gringotts, and it was left to Percy because it belonged to his father. The 4 demigods meet a satyr named Grover, who was to bring Thalia to camp, but she refused unless the others could come with them. In Brooklyn, the group was captured by a Cyclops, who managed to confuse Percy and Annabeth until they managed to find Grover. Thalia and Luke were almost eaten by the monster. Wingardium Leviosa, says Percy, as he lifts his friends out of the ropes when Annabeth stabs the monster in the foot. Thalia, I'll carry Percy. Grover, hold Annabeth's hand, says Luke, as the 5 travellers make a run for it after killing the monster. But they are too slow, and on the hill, only 4 of the 5 travellers make it to the camp. Thalia is turned into a pine tree by her father, as Luke and Annabeth were claimed by their respective parents, while Percy was unclaimed. That remained for a week, until everyone got a chance to see what his powers were truly like. It was August 18th, 1999, Percy's 7th birthday, and a week since the trio arrived at camp. Swirling dark clouds filled the sky. Wee Little Weasley is a mudblood-loving half-breed, says Bellatrix, as she enters the camp with Lucius Malfoy and Severus Snape, because they were coming to kill Percy. Not now, not ever, Lestrange, says Percy, as he brings them to their knees, and the 3 Death Eaters almost start choking on their own blood. Percy lets them go. Leave this camp, and if any of you ever attack me again, then I will make your deaths very slow and very painful, says Percy to the 3 people before him. Percy may have lost his eyesight, but he used his other senses in order to figure out who was there. Everyone began to kneel around him. Chiron approached Percy. Earthshaker, Storbringer, father of horses, hail Perseus Weasley, the son of Poseidon, says Chiron. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York, July 15th, 2003. It had been nearly 4 years since Percy defeated the Death Eaters that had invaded the camp, and he was assigned the Poseidon cabin, which was fine with him. Percy was given the same training as everyone else, and he loved it since he was given an opportunity to use his other senses to defeat his sparring partner. A letter arrived for Percy and Annabeth to read it for A letter arrived for Percy, and Annabeth read it for him. Percy, it's your Hogwarts letter, says Annabeth, as Chiron took the letter when it was given to him. An old friend of mine has been wanting me to visit for some time. We could make a trip of it for the entire camp to visit Diagon Alley. All the campers who wish to visit Diagon Alley, please ready and waiting at the big house in 20 minutes, says Chiron. In the end, Percy, Annabeth, Grover, Luke, Selena, Clarice, and Beckendorf were the campers that were going. Wow, a phoenix, said the 6 sighted travellers, while Percy petted the phoenix. Hello, folks, said Percy, and then the group was transported away. Everyone stayed together. Grover, this is the list of supplies that Percy is to get for his school year. No one is to wander off alone, says Chiron, as he enters the leaky cauldron. The group went to the bank in order to get Percy's money. The Athena cabin can make your robes, Percy, says Annabeth, and Percy smiles at his crush in gratitude. They went to each shop with Clarice, Luke, and Beckendorf protecting the younger demigods. This is until the group crashed into 2 boys. Bloody hell, Charlie, watch out where you're walking, cries a boy. Shut up, William, hisses Charlie, and Percy approaches them. Bill and Charlie Weasley, says Percy, as the 2 boys look at the boy before them. They notice the lightning bolt scar, which covers his eyes. Percy, they say, as they hug him tightly. Sorry, my name is Bill, and this is one of the brothers, Charlie. We are Percy's older brothers. He went to our Aunt Beryl's house for his protection, even though our parents have removed everything from him at the Burrow, says Bill with disdain, evidence in his voice. Could you show where we could find supplies for blind wizards? Asked Clarice, and the two brothers led the group to a smaller shop, where they found a white cane, Braille typewriter, and ink from the Braille writer. Why didn't you try to look for him? Questioned Luke, when the group was enjoying some ice cream. Bill and Charlie sighed. We would have looked for him, but we never knew where he was sent. We knew our Aunt Beryl lived in America, but we had no clue where in America she lived, said Charlie. After the brief break, the group got Percy a pet, and when they entered the shop, a phoenix landed on Percy's shoulder, as though she was his best friend. What does she look like? Asks Percy. She is white with green eyes, says Luke calmly. I'm going to name you Poseidon, after my father, says Percy in a whisper. Bill and Charlie hugged Percy goodbye. The brothers promised to reunite with one another on the train. When the demigods returned to camp, there was a package waiting for Percy, which contained books in Braille and how to control his powers. September 1st, 2003. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. Percy quietly read his books, which were not affected by dyslexia. He heard the door open, and he heard the shuffling of two people entering the compartment. Percy almost brought out his weapon, which he was gifted by Chiron. Hi, Percy, said Bill, and Percy sets his books down as he ambushes his brother in a hug once more. Charlie hugs Percy as well, and the brothers are once more reunited. Percy, we will see you at the feast, and whatever house you're in, just know that we are proud of you, says Charlie, as the three brothers depart the train. Percy is in a boat with three others. Hi, my name's Oliver Wood, and this is Marcus Flint and Penelope Clearwater. What's your name? Asks Oliver. Percy Weasley, says Percy, as the boat arrives at Hogwarts. The Sorting Hat began to sing, and Percy was not freaked as opposed to the rest of the fellow first years. Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, your top hat sleek and tall, for I'm the Hogwarts Sorting Hat, and I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head that Sorting Hat can't see, so try me on, and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong to Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring nerve and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, or those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on, don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm the thinking cap. Everyone clapped the hat once it had concluded its song. The sorting was done alphabetically, so Percy and Oliver were towards the end. Percival Weasley, calls Professor McGonagall. Percy slowly makes his way forward, and he is sorted to Gryffindor. Bill and Charlie had cheered the loudest out of everyone during the sorting ceremony. Percy was excited to start Hogwarts, and he was even more excited with the fact that he was in Gryffindor with his brothers. September 2nd, 2004. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. As the dawn broke on the official first day of classes, and Percy woke up as soon as Apollo began to pull the sun chariot across the sky, Percy was the first Gryffindor that was awake in the entire tower. Percy was given his timetable as he and Oliver made their way to Transfiguration, which was taught by their Transfiguration teacher. The class was enjoyable, except for when Oliver had somehow transfigured Percy's robes into a toga, which he found hilarious. When it was time, Dada, though it was a much different story, because the teacher was Professor Mars, and he believed that the entire world was out to get him. He made up tales about fighting various monsters with nothing but his wand. Percy was not impressed by his claimed feats, but he kept his mouth shut, or else he would reveal his demigod heritage to the school, which would put him in grave danger. Percy enjoyed each of his classes, aside from Dada. Professor Mars had taken an obsession to Percy, and he was particularly interested in Percy's camp necklace. He constantly asked Percy to show it to him, and he mad as well as annoyed when Percy told him no. It all came to a head on Halloween when Professor Mars came running into the Great Hall. Incendia and the Chimera in the entrance hall. Thought you should know, says Professor Mars before he collapses. Everyone quickly leaves the hall. Nobody notices that Percy isn't among them as he slips away in order to deal with the monster. Percy listens and then runs towards the creature, and it turns towards him. Ah, the sport of Poseidon! It has been centuries since Zeus had released me in order to test a hero, cries Incendia as the Chimera gets ready to attack Percy. He runs outside as the monsters follow towards the Black Lake, which was illuminated by the lightning from the thunderstorm. Come and get me, Incendia. We are by a lake, cries Percy. Get him, Sonny, cries Incendia, and the Chimera pounces on Percy. The castle doors open, and the teachers come racing out. Leave, puny mortals, cries Incendia, as she cracks a barrier which prevents the teachers as well as Bill and Charlie. Percy summons water from the Black Lake, but before he can unleash the water, the Chimera bites him in the chest, which causes him to drop the water on top of his head. The water heals him, and he charges at the Chimera with his sword in hand. Percy evades the Chimera's tail and manages to cut it off, which causes the Chimera to disappear. Now it's your turn, Incendia, cries Percy as he launches at Incendia with his sword drawn. He manages to cut off the... it's a echidna! Whoops. He manages to cut off the echidna's tail before he stabs her in the chest, which causes her to disappear into golden dust. The storm starts to dissipate, and Percy stumbles to the group of onlookers who were staring at him mouth agape. I taught him everything he knows, bragged Professor Mars, as though it was a grand achievement. Percy just laughed at him, and once he had finished laughing, Percy looked at him directly in the eyes. The parts of the monster that Percy had cut off disappeared with a small pop. After the incident on Halloween, none of the teachers trusted Professor Mars, which he didn't really care about since he had a majority of the students singing his praises at the end of the year. During the leaving feast, Poseidon is on Percy's shoulder, and the Phoenix travelled back to camp, much to the annoyance of Molly and Arthur. Molly and Arthur were annoyed, but they knew that they couldn't do anything about it. Percy returned to camp, and when he was walking with Annabeth, Annabeth grabbed his shirt collar and pulled him in for a kiss. Percy, how about in a few years we date one another? Says Annabeth cheekily, and Percy returned her smile with a smile of his own. Percy and Annabeth increased how much they argued with one another, much to the annoyance of the rest of the camp. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21, Chapter 2, Second Year. September 1st, 2004. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. Another surname had gone by at camp. Another summer had gone by at camp, with Luke going on a quest to get the golden apples of Hesperides. Percy remained at camp, and he had managed to create a hurricane which could rival that of his immortal family. Percy, it's best that you don't unleash that power at camp ever again. You've managed to annoy the Dryads, says Grover, as he and Percy were in Diagon Alley. Percy explained to Grover about his 3 friends at Hogwarts. Percival! Cried a loud voice as Percy was squished in a back-breaking hug. Percy smacked the person with his cane until they let go. Percival, that is no way to greet your mother or father. Now apologize, says a male voice in a condescending tone. I never knew my mother before she and my stepfather abandoned me in America when she was pregnant with my half-brother, says Percy. He could hear the people take a step back in shock. Mum, Dad, we told you to not approach him, says Bill, and Percy could feel the Grover had put his hand on his shoulder. Not now, William. I have a right to my children, and he is my son, even though he was taken by your Aunt Beryl, says Arthur darkly. Fine, fine then. Let's go to Gringotts, and this can be settled, says Percy coldly, as Grover guides him to Gringotts. The blood test is done, and it is proven that Percy is not the son of Arthur Weasley. You flew to Aunt Beryl to tell her that you wouldn't be coming to pick me up, says Percy coldly as he leaves Molly and Arthur in front of the bank. Percy enjoyed his last few days of summer, and he performed in the camp talent show. His act was making sculptures out of ice. The winner is Percy Weasley for his ice sculptures of the Titanic, the Palace of Versailles, and the Pantheon, announces Chiron, but he was drowned out by the other demigods. Everyone was impressed by what he had managed to create, especially since the audience was calling out suggestions. When Percy returned to England for his second year of Hogwarts, Poseidon flashed him to school because he had overslept and missed the train. He landed on the Gryffindor table, and much to the horror of everyone around him, Percy was standing in the foot. Phil and Charlie each grabbed an arm to help him off of the table. 15 points from Gryffindor for missing the train, says Minerva calmly. Percy, why were you late? Asks Charlie, and his question could be heard throughout the Great Hall. I create a massive sculpture, says Percy, as he uses the pumpkin juice to recreate his ice sculptures. It was a replica of Hogwarts itself. Everyone looked at it in shock. Everyone at my camp thought that it was incredible, says Percy, as Minerva, Phileas, and Albus come to inspect the castle. This is incredible, Mr. Weasley, says Phileas. Everyone was impressed by how it looked, including Snape. Students, please welcome our new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Mrs. Dodds, announces Dumbledore. Percy feels an underworld presence, and he realizes that it is a creature sent by his Uncle Hades. Percy continued to excel at Hogwarts, even though the professor continued to send Molly and Arthur letters about he is a fantastic student. Percy never wrote Molly and Arthur a letter, even though they sent him countless letters. Belle and Charlie were sent letters that almost made it sound as though Molly and Arthur were begging them to get Percy to send a letter. The second eldest Weasley's refusal to help Molly's weird plan to force Percy to return to the Burrow. He didn't want to return, which was fine by them. When it was time for the winter solstice, Percy was picked by Chiron at King's Cross. Even Molly and Arthur tried to bring him home by forcefully grabbing him, but Percy bit Arthur's hand, and he managed to make it to Chiron, who brought him to camp. During the solstice, Zeus's thunderbolt was stolen, and Percy was the primary suspect, even though he couldn't even see it. Lord Hades, is your helm missing as well? Questions Percy curiously, and Hades appears surprised. Yes, it is missing, Perseus. It disappeared on August 31st, and I have sent the Furies to find it, but they have not managed to find it as of yet. This is why Alecto is at your school, says Hades, and Percy is given until the summer solstice to find both the bolt and the helm of darkness. Percy kept his distance from Arthur and Molly in order to be happy, which further infuriated the couple. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshop21. Chapter 3, Lightning Thief. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York, June 4th, 2005. Upon his return to camp, Percy greeted his friends, and he received his prophecy. You shall go west to face the god who was turned, says Oliver. You shall find what is stolen, and see it safely returned, says Charlie. You shall be betrayed by the one you call friend, says Bill. Percy already knew who he wanted to go on the quest with him. Annabeth, Grover, will you go on the quest with me? Asks Percy to his friends. They readily agreed. Pack your bags and meet me by the Pegasus stables, says Percy. The trio packed bags, with Percy packing his wand, Riptide, Galleons, Ambrosia, Nectar, and some drachma. Percy, why are we taking Pegasi instead of a bus? Asks Annabeth, as she tries to understand her friend's way of thinking. On the bus we would be sitting ducks, while on Pegasi we are moving faster, and we can easily attack a monster if it gets too close, says Percy. His reasoning makes sense to Grover and Annabeth. Good luck, campers, and have a safe return, says Chiron, as the two demigods and one satyr mount the Pegasi. They head for New Jersey so that the Pegasi can get a break between each flight to prevent problems from happening. Luke had gifted Grover flying shoes so that his hooves were covered. "Grover, what's ahead?" questions Percy as Annabeth guides him through the forest so that he doesn't trip over any roots. "There is a store ahead of us. Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium," says Grover as Annabeth and Percy become enthralled by the scent of fast food. The questers made their way to the Garden Gnome Emporium. They entered the building as quietly as possible. They found a woman sleeping in the back room, and Percy took out Riptide and cut off her head. From her scarf, the questers could hear the hissing of snakes. "Medusa," breathes Annabeth in shock over killing a monster that had been created by her mother. "What does she look like?" questions Percy as he hears the hissing of snakes. "She has sunglasses and a scarf covering her head," describes Annabeth. The questers found a box and Grover wrote on it: "The Gods, Mount Olympus, 600th floor, Empire State Building, New York, NY. With best wishes, Annabeth Chase, Grover Underwood, and Perseus Weasley." "Percy, why do you want to send this to the Gods, man?" questions Grover after the package had disappeared. "Simple, Grover. The gods have been alive for millennia, and they have done nothing but cause countless problems for demigods, while demigods have been killed by countless monsters, all for the gods who don't do anything for us," says Percy. "Hey Percy, what is Hogwarts like exactly?" asks Annabeth curiously as we board a train that was going to take us to Denver. I could feel the magical presence of several witches and wizards. "Hogwarts is a good school, but the teachers are biased, and the headmaster only really cares about the school when the students are in danger," whispers Percy to Annabeth. "How bad are the other houses?" questions Annabeth in a whispered tone. "Is it bad to the point that if I was to lose... Oh, it is bad to the point that if I was to lose 200 points before the end of the year, then the Slytherins would be celebrating, while the other houses would hate me, including my own house," says Percy. Percy could envision Annabeth's horrified look. They became quiet as the sound of another man walking towards them had them act as though a silencing charm was placed on them. "You attend Hogwarts, lad. The name's Alistair Pruitt," says the mysterious man. "You're the Minister of Magic for MACUSA, says Percy in surprise. "That I am, and you must be Percival Weasley, the boy who had gotten struck by a Diffindo across the face. We have heard about your skills from Albus, and I was hoping to offer you a position at MACUSA in 8 years. The head of our oceanography division will be retiring, and we would love to have you join our department," says Arthur. And Annabeth as well as Grover are both listening into the conversation. "I would love that, but may I have time to decide my answer?" says Percy after a few minutes of silence. "Of course, and I won't be telling this answer to Fudge, because he is a rather incompetent fool," says Alistair before he leaves the trio. The train has a few hours delay in St. Louis. They visit the St. Louis Arch, but Percy smells something rather unnerving. "Ah, the spawn of Poseidon. It has been centuries since Zeus had released me in order to test a hero," cries Echidna as the Chimera gets ready to attack Percy. Echidna had forgotten their encounter when Percy was in his first year. Although this time around, Chimera had gotten the upper hand and bit Percy on his ankle. "Jump, you pathetic mortal," cries Echidna as Percy inches closer and closer to what he believes was the edge. He could sense a body of water below him, so he jumped. He landed in a river of some sort. A nymph appeared before him. She is a messenger from his father, warning him not to trust the gifts, and when she disappears, Percy resurfaces, and he reunites with his friends. They hurry back to the train, and Percy explains what happened. Annabeth and Grover are both somewhat horrified, but they are understanding. "Percy, could you call Poseidon? I just saw someone call the police," whispers Grover, "and I called my beloved Phoenix, who flame-traveled us to a diner in Denver, where we meet Ares. He wanted the questers to retrieve his missing sword. When the trio arrived at the water park and see clean clothes hanging in the gift shop, Percy and Annabeth change into clean clothes, and they eventually find the shield as well as a pink scarf. "Oh no, seaweed brain, no love magic for you," says Annabeth as she stuffs the scarf into her short pocket. As Percy grabs the shield, they realise too late that it was a trap set up by Hephaestus in order to catch his wife and half-brother cheating. Using the water pressure and Annabeth's brains, they clear the gates of love. They return to the diner and give Ares back his shield. He had travel arranged for them. Barnacle brat and brain brat, beware the boy you call friend, warns Ares as he rides away on his motorcycle. The questers went to the Lotus Hotel and Casino, where they played games and meet a boy with a sister, who were wearing old clothes. When they managed to make it out of the hotel, it was June 19th. Using their casino cards, they got in a taxi, which drove them to Santa Monica. Percy entered Santa Monica's water, and he is brought to a nymph who gave him 3 pearls and told him to use them wisely. The trio accidentally entered the lair of Procrustes, the stretcher, who nearly kills Annabeth and Grover, with Percy saving their lives. The group enters the underworld and bribes Charon into letting them board the ferry. Annabeth tames Cerberus, but as the group is making their way to the palace, the shoes start to drag Grover towards a large pit. Percy and Annabeth manage to save Grover from what would have been certain doom. Grover got the shoes from Luke. Do you think, says Percy as the group walks the palace. Percy, as much as I wish it wasn't Luke. Luke betrayed us, so that means he stole the lightning bolt. We will talk to Lord Hades and tell him the truth, says Annabeth. What do you brats want? Grumbled Hades angrily. Lord Hades, we had originally suspected you to have stolen Lord Zeus's lightning bolt. It was the son of Hermes who had stolen it. Ares discovered the thief, and he wished for a fight amongst his family, says Percy. Hades looks angry, but not towards them. Children, I shall allow you to leave the underworld without facing my wrath. If you find my helm of darkness, Perseus, I will also rid your school of the history and replace him with another ghost, says Hades. As he sends the 3 children back to the beach, where Ares is waiting for them. I thought that you little brats would have been killed by Hades, so you figured out the truth then, says Ares as he leans on his motorcycle handles. On the handlebar was the Helm of Darkness in the form of a ski mask. Give us the Helm of Darkness, and I might not tell your father about this, says Percy as he draws his wand. As if, kid. Now put that stick down and fight me, says Ares. No, Wingardium Leviosa, says Percy, and Ares begins to float. That is, until he is over the Pacific Ocean. Ah, cries Ares as he is dropped from the height of a 10-story building into the water below. Percy, he's glowing bright red. You made him even angrier, says Annabeth. Percy has a sword fight against Ares, and he is the winner. Watch out. You have made a powerful enemy, and when you need it most, your sword will fail you, curses Ares. He disappears, leaving behind the helm. Poseidon, return this to Uncle Hades, and then bring us to Olympus, says Percy, as his beloved Phoenix does so. The questers arrive on Olympus on June 20th, a day before the deadline was to end. The gods were assembled and were ready to conduct their meeting. Demigods, tell us what has happened on your quest, demands Zeus. Annabeth and Percy take turns explaining what has happened on the quest. Percy explains the fights, while Annabeth explains the rest. Ares was in the throne room, and his heel was slowly bleeding ichor, which proved that the demigods were telling the truth. I see that the son of one of my descendants is here. Perseus, I can give you a rare gift of magical sight, in which your magic can guide you, says a mysterious voice as they make their way to the 3 questers. Lady Hecate, I would love that gift, says Percy, as he feels a hand being placed on his head. He feels a rush of magic surge through his body, and he was able to see where Annabeth was standing a few feet away from him. Hecate, what do you mean by descendants? Questions Athena curiously. Centuries ago, I created a magical school in England, as well as 4 gifted people. They were Godric, Helena, Rowena, and Salazar. As the centuries passed, I blessed people with magic, until families began to have their own magical children. These 4 witches and wizards had grown my original school, and they caused a division between the 4 houses, which still persists, says Hecate. The demigods return to camp. The demigods are celebrated for completing their impossible quest. The bead for that summer was a lightning bolt, and Luke seemed to be angrier than ever. That is, until one night he disappeared, but not before unleashing a pit scorpion in Percy's cabin. Percy, you ratted me out to the gods. Kronos is a much better leader than them. You will regret this. Luke. Was the note that Annabeth found in the morning as the campers responded to the sounds of Percy's cries. Percy was rushed to the infirmary. Annabeth read the note in horror. She had always seen Luke like a brother, and now he betrayed not only her, but also the entire camp. Percy rested at camp for a few weeks before going for his 3rd year at Hogwarts, while all the time dreading having Fred and George at Hogwarts. Percy was terrified to do divination in ancient runes, especially since divination was worse than meeting the oracle. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21, Chapter 4, 3rd Year. September 1st, 2005. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. The silent phoenix flamed Percy onto platform 9 3/4. Percy was saddened by Luke's betrayal, but he knew that it wasn't going to change anything. Percy boarded the train as his estranged loudly arrived on the platform. Charlie brought the twins to the car that Percy was in. So, you are disrespectful. Get of brother, says 2 voices in tandem. Fred, George, knock it off. Percy was well within his right to stay with Aunt Beryl, because Mum and Dad were awful towards him, says Charlie sternly towards them. Percy, what happened to your eyes? Asks Fred. Well, Fred, when Molly and Arthur were at the hospital to deliver you, Bill, Charlie and I were staying with Uncle Fabian Gideon when Bellatrix Lestrange entered the safe house. She casted a defendo at me, but I turned my head and the curse cut across my eyes. I haven't been able to see since that day, says Percy. Mum told Fred and I that you had lost your eyes because you had stolen her wand and caused it yourself, which is why you were sent away, says George in a confused tone. Yeah, it is, and I meet my real family. I have never truly seen Molly and Arthur as my real family because of how they treated me, says Percy coldly. Percy read his books that were gifted to him by the Athena cabin. It contained the history of the Muggle world, which really interested Percy. What are you reading, Percy? Asks Fred curiously after some silence. The brothers had changed into their school robes. I'm reading a history of the Muggle world. They had achieved so much with that magic. I have some friends in America who have seen some of the incredible structures that were built within the use of the magic, says Percy. The 4 brothers parted ways with one another as Charlie and Percy got in a carriage, while Fred and George got in the boats. So, Percy, what classes did you sign up for this year? Asks Oliver, and Percy could sense Charlie leaning forward to hear what he says. I signed up for divination and ancient runes. I plan on self-studying the rest of the courses, says Percy. Then he senses the arrival of Fred and George. Frederick Weasley, calls Minerva as Fred approaches the Sorting Hat. Gryffindor, calls the Sorting Hat, and then it calls the same for George. The twins were in the same house as one another. Dinner had just started when a snowy white phoenix appeared in the Great Hall. It was Poseidon, and she was followed by a green phoenix as well as a red phoenix. Come here, girl, calls Percy, as he holds his scarred pet on his shoulder. The other 2 phoenixes see who the owner is, and they both disappear as quickly as they had appeared. Who's this, Percy? Asks George curiously, as he hadn't seen this phoenix before. This is my pet phoenix, Poseidon. A Muggle friend of mine helped me to name her, lies Percy, as he cannot tell his brother about the gods. September 2nd, 2005. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. As Apollo brought his solar chariot across the morning sky, Percy awakened as he made his way to the Black Lake. He met with the Mer Chief, who was angered at Poseidon for never recognizing their needs. Of course, Chief Oceanus. I will speak to my father, and we can set up a trading system between Atlantis and your village here in the Black Lake, says Percy, to which the chief smiles. Percy feels a hand in the water, and he quickly makes his way back to the surface, where he senses Charlie waiting for him. Come on, Percy, it's time for breakfast, says Charlie, as he drives Percy off, and the two brothers head for the Great Hall. Percy heard an owl crash landing into a plate of bacon. Oh, Errol, groans Fred, George, and Charlie at their family's ancient owl making a crash landing. Howlers as well as lessers for Fred and George, says Charlie, as he holds the howler nervously. Percival Ignatius Weasley, how dare you continue to spread blatant lies about your father and I? We left you in America for your own protection, yet you ran away from your aunt's house in order to, attend a camp for stupid children such as yourself? You are to come home for Christmas this year, or else you'll be forcefully brought home, screams Molly. Percy runs from the Great Hall as he starts to feel the sting of tears in his eyes. Percy ran to the Black Lake. He could hear someone run after him, but he swam to the Mer Chief's village in order to calm down. After some time, Percy sensed a figure swimming towards him. It was the headmaster. Percy, why are you down here? And how are you breathing without the bubblehead charm? Asks Albus in shock when he noticed that the third year was breathing perfectly normal. Before Percy could answer, he felt an iris message appear before him. It was Poseidon. Perseus, I have spoken with the chief of the village, whom lives in the lake at your school. Thank you for bringing their neglect up to my attention. I am sending my son and daughter to Trab to set up the trade, says Poseidon, before he ends the iris message. I see, Percy, that you are the son of Poseidon, says Albus in shock. Yes, I am, sir. Arthur Weasley is not related to me, and he, as well as Molly, abandoned me in America when I was 3. I was brought to a special camp where I learned who my real father was, says Percy calmly. You have detention for a week for missing your classes today. No points removed because everyone heard what Molly had said to you, says Albus as they return to the Great Hall, as everyone enjoying their evening meal. Oliver was in Percy's classes, aside from ancient ruins, which he shared with Penelope. They gave him his homework, which he finished and brought in for the next day. During lunch the next day, the sound of trumpets could be heard. The students and teachers rushed outside in order to see what was happening. Fred and George got too close to the edge. Percy used the water in order to save his younger brothers from drowning. He also removed the water from their clothing. Presenting Prince Triton and Princess Rhoda of Atlantis, cries someone as two figures with bright green tails swim to the shore. Which of you controlled the water like that? Questions Rhoda, as she looks at the hundreds of children before her. She and Triton were told by their father that they had a little brother here, but before any of the students could speak up, the Minotaur appeared. Everyone, get inside, cries a voice, as a boy with raven black hair and a lightning bolt across his eyes rushes forward. Percy, watch out, cries an older boy with red hair. The boy known as Percy created an ice barrier around him and the Minotaur, which prevented the red-haired boy from coming close. The rain continued steadily, and then all of a sudden the ice barrier was removed, as Percy had held a bronze sword along with the Minotaur horn. Triton and Rhoda approached Percy and the redhead who was scolding him. So you are a brother? Questions Triton. Rhoda is surprised to see not green eyes, but instead white eyes. Yes, I am. My name is Perseus Weasley, and I am 13, says Percy. Triton and Rhoda remember that nearly 14 years ago, a witch summoned their father, and he was gone for 2 weeks. But then he returned and had told their mother about what happened to him. You were born because your mother had summoned our father. She captured him for 2 weeks, says Rhoda, as she recalls what happened. Mum did that, and one day she had a raven in a cage, so I freed it, and the raven never returned, except for a stuffed blue whale, which was given to Percy, says Charlie. After that day, the rest of the year was normal, aside from Percy being carried to the burrow. Percy kept his mouth shut the entire time, and he refused to talk with Molly and Arthur the entire time. Upon his return to Hogwarts, he asked the headmaster to send his grades to his friend Chiron. When Percy returned to camp, he sensed that it was overrun by mechanical monsters. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21. Chapter 5, Sea of Monsters. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York, May 30th, 2006. Percy, get water from the lake in order to short-circuit the bulls while I fend them off with the Ares cabin, says Athena, as she and an unknown boy help to defend the camp. Percy summons the water, and he adds the energy to it, which made it into a hurricane. The hurricane caused the mechanical bulls to malfunction, which gave Clarice time to finish them off. What happened? I thought no monster could enter the camp borders, says Percy, surprised, and Clarice points to Thalia's tree. Percy is surprised after Annabeth tells him that someone had poisoned Thalia's tree. Let's go to Chiron, says Annabeth, as she drags Percy to Chiron, where the centaur is packing his bags. For Annabeth and Percy, it was devastating, since Chiron was like his father to them. Annabeth, my dear, I was fired, says Chiron, as he embraces the crying kids, who he has come to see as his own children. Percy drops his bag off in his cabin, and he goes to catch up with Will Solus, when she heard a male voice behind her. So you're Poseidon's blind brat. I am your camp director, Tantalus. You better listen to me, you little brat, or you'll be returning home in pieces, says Tantalus. Percy quickly made his way to the archery area, where Will was shooting some arrows in order to help with the stress. Will, the man who replaced Chiron just threatened me with bodily harm, says Percy, and his voice is laced with fear and panic. Don't worry, Percy, you are going to be safe. I have a feeling that you are going to away from here soon, and that your 4th year will hopefully be normal, Will says offhandedly, as the conch horn sounds at dinner. My old friend, watch out for Poseidon's child. He may be blind, but don't underestimate him, because he can be terrifying, says Dionysus, while the boy in question stumbles into his table, but eventually manages to sit down. A trident appears over Tyson's head, and it causes a roar of laughter to swoop through the camp. But Percy is happy to have a sibling who is slightly younger than him, and not magical. Percy once again saw the green glow wash over the camp, and he was disgusted by the appearance of Tantalus. Campers, we decided to reinstate the chariot races, announces Dionysus, which causes surprise and some panic around the tables, since the chariot races were cancelled because of its death toll. During the campfire, which neither camp director attended, the campers had set up a 24/7 border watch in order to protect the camp at all hours, whether it be day or night. Percy had his patrols with Annabeth, Beckendorf, and Clarice. Percy had been receiving dreams from Grover, and he could actually see his friend. He was trapped on an island somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. The island had something that attracted satyrs. Percy and Annabeth were designing a chariot together when he brought it up. Well, Seaweed Brain, it might be the Golden Fleece, which is powerful enough to save Thalia's tree, but it has been lost for centuries. The Grey Sisters brought Tyson and I to camp, and they mentioned 30, 31, 75, 12, which doesn't make much sense, but I think they're coordinates to the Golden Fleece, says Annabeth. The chariot is designed with horses and owls on it, and it was designed that Annabeth and Percy would ride in the chariot together. None of the other campers complained, since Percy wouldn't be able to see, and he was good at hand-to-hand combat. On the day of the race, there was an impossibly loud noise of pigeons that had metal beaks. As soon as the race began, and the competitors were around the first bend, that is when the pigeons attacked. Chiron's music, suggests Percy, as Annabeth drives the chariot to the big house. They found a boombox and some cassettes. Percy pressed play and held the boombox up as high as he could. Archers, fire! Cries Annabeth, and then the sound of dozens of birds hitting the ground fills the air, before Tantalus congratulates Clarice for winning, even though she tried to deny the praise. There was a celebratory dinner of Kentucky Fried Pigeon, while everyone went to a campfire. Annabeth, Percy, and Tyson were sentenced to dish duty by using lava in order to get the dishes sparkling clean. When the trio had finished cleaning the dishes, they went to the campfire and attempted to explain to Tantalus about the Golden Fleece. Thaddeus keeps denying that the camp is in danger. That is until the whole camp is screaming, "We need a quest! We need a quest! We need a quest! We need a quest!" It causes so much chaos that Percy shouts a spell that he heard on the night his uncles were murdered. Morse Morda. The spell creates a phoenix in the sky. "Percy, what the fuck was that?" questions Beckendorf as the phoenix disappears from the sky. "That was a spell used by Death Eaters. It was warning that the people in the house were dead. I only heard that spell once, but I've never forgotten it. I heard it on the night my uncles were murdered, and I never want to use it again, because it is an omen of death," says Percy sadly. All of the campers settle down, and it is decided that Clarice will go on the quest for the Golden Fleece that night. That night, Percy couldn't sleep, so he snuck out of his cabin and made his way to the beach. Another person came and sat next to him. "Who is your favourite Greek hero?" asked the man, and he smelled as though he worked in a mail room his entire life. "My favourite would have to be Circe, since he is blind, just like me," says Percy. "Why have you come to me, Hermes?" he questioned, as the man gasps in surprise before he hears snakes asking about rats. "You smell like you've been delivering packages and parcels for centuries, but your heralded staff was the final piece in the puzzle," he explains. "Here are 3 bags. There is a cruise ship off in the distance. Pray to your father for a way onto that ship. The bags contain money, clothes, vitamins to help you feel like yourself again, and the thermos containing the 4 winds," says Hermes. Then he disappears as Annabeth and Tyson appear. Percy explains his encounter with Hermes, and a few minutes later, 2 animals appear before them. "Hippocampi," says Annabeth, as she grabs a bag and helps Percy onto the hippocampi before getting on behind him. They arrive at the ship, and Annabeth climbs up first, followed by Percy and then Tyson. The ship was giving the 3 demigods an almost haunted feeling. They found 2 cabins to sleep in for the night, with Percy and Tyson sharing a cabin while Annabeth got her own. When the boys had awoken and retrieved Annabeth from her cabin, they explored the ship and found that while it had mortal passengers, it also had monstrous passengers. The group was captured by 2 monster-human hybrids. "Percy, come on," cries Annabeth as she grabs his hand, and the group escapes in a lifeboat. They use the 4 winds in order to get further away from the ship. Once they arrive in Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, Tyson went to find them some food. Tyson finds a Hydra and a shop called Monster Donuts. Clarice defeats the Hydra, and the soldiers aren't happy to have a British boy on the ship. Clarice has to stop the cursed zombie sailors from trying to execute him, since the British were nothing more than traitorous cheats who can't keep their own bloody deal. The ship exploded as they were approaching Scylla and her sister Charybdis. Tyson dies, and Percy is rescued by Annabeth. They arrive at CC's spa and resort, and while Annabeth was given a complete makeover in which her hair was braided into a bun on the top of her head, Percy was turned into a guinea pig, and Percy used the vitamins from Hermes, and she turned him back into a human, as well as Edward Teach and the rest of the crew on the Queen Anne's Revenge. Edward Teach, or as history knows him, Blackbeard, was thought to have died, but it turns out he was just turned into a cute, fluffy creature. Percy tied her up in order to keep her from swimming to the sirens, but he forgot to remove her dagger. So Percy stopped the ship, and he dove in to save Annabeth. He saw what she wanted the most in the world, which was for her dad to marry Athena, to design the world how she wanted, and to save Luke. They make it back aboard the ship, and they sail to 30-31-75-12, or better known as the island of Polyphemus. They climbed the cliff, and Tudor Rose hung from the belly of a ship, while Annabeth used her invisibility cap in order to distract the Cyclops, while Percy freed Grover and Clarice. The plan failed since Polyphemus caught Annabeth and cried, "I have caught nobody." Grover, Clarice, and Percy attacked the Cyclops. And then Tyson, who was apparently alive, got the golden fleece since he was the only one who wouldn't be killed by the piranha sheep. Tyson gave the fleece to Percy, and he put it on Annabeth, which started to heal her wound and broken ribs. The three demigods, Cyclops and the Satyr, escaped the island, and the hippocampi brought the group to Miami. Chiron saved Percy, Annabeth, Grover, and Tyson from Luke after they had shown Mr. D that Chiron was innocent, and they sent Clarice to deliver the fleece back to Camp Half-Blood. Percy, my boy, Voldemort is returning. When Voldemort returns, he is going to try to get you to join the Death Eaters. Leave England and never return until the war is won, says Chiron, and Percy trusts him. Tyson had created a shield for Percy, which was helpful in the chariot race, which resulted in the Athena and Poseidon cabins in winning the chariot race. After the fleece was placed onto Thalia's tree, Thalia had woken up, and she was surprised to find that 7-year-old Annabeth, Chase, and Percy were now 13 years old. I think we'll be good friends, says Thalia as she hugs her cousin while thinking of a little 2-year-old boy who had once tried to eat a stapler. Percy, are you attending the school that your family attended? Asks Thalia as she remembers her mom once mentioning a school called Hogwarts. I am, Thalia, and I have reunited with Bill and Charlie, says Percy, and Thalia enters the Poseidon cabin as everyone gathers for the Zeus cabin. Thalia saw the stuffed blue whale that she took on the night that she ran away with Percy in her arms. Thalia, I'm so sorry, but Luke betrayed the camp, and last summer he tried to kill me, says Percy sadly as he makes his way to Thalia, who is sitting on his bunk. He just holds her as she cries over the fact that her friend betrayed the camp and nearly destroyed the tree that was sustaining her life force. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21, Chapter 6, Year 4/Titan's Curse. September 1st, 2006. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. Another year of Hogwarts, just like the year prior, but Chiron had to stop being the data teacher because he was an unusual centaur, and Percy was worried that he was going to be taken in by the Ministry before being shipped off to Azkaban. Percy was sitting with his 3 best friends. Marcus, did you and Penelope start dating one another? Questions Percy, curiously, about why a pureblood member of the Sacred 28 would date a Muggleborn. Yeah, we did, says Penelope confidently. Percy turned to Oliver, who was already grumbling about Percy being a seer. Wait, you guys bet on us? Says Penelope, annoyed. Of course we did, says Percy and Oliver shamelessly, before they are hit by a book and a cat. Before they are hit by books and a cat. Marcus unleashed his pet owl that was named Athena. Athena proceeded to peck and claw at Percy. Okay, I get it, says Percy in annoyance, as the 4 students start howling with laughter amongst one another. When the Hogwarts students arrived, Percy felt dread as he realized that his brothers weren't sitting at the Gryffindor table. Percy spotted Charlie, but then he heard a cry of laughter as he felt something get splattered across his eyes. It was dung, and Oliver helped Percy to the nearest washroom. The dung had gotten into Percy's scar, which had never fully healed after over 10 years. Percy refused to speak to Fred and George for 2 weeks afterwards. The twins tried and failed to corner Percy in a relentless attempt to get him to forgive them, but Percy continued to refuse. The twins had threatened to tell Molly, but even after Molly sent him numerous howlers, Percy still refused. Fred and George continued to make Percy the main target of their pranks, which caused the rift between the brothers to only widen with each useless attempt. Until Halloween, that is. In which Percy finally snapped. Enough, you bloody brats! I have a lot more pressing problems on my mind, as opposed to dealing with the likes of you. Either myself or another person shall bloody fucking die on our 16th birthday. You have ruthlessly pranked without as much as a thought to whether or not I want to forgive you. Fabian and Gideon Weasley, you are bloody dead to me. I will never see either of you as my brothers. I am never going to bloody see again, yet you constantly act as though I am just faking my loss of eyesight. I swear on the river Styx that I'm never going to forgive you. cries Percy in the middle of the great hall. The sound of thunder could be heard, and Charlie knew that Percy had sworn an unbreakable vow that he would never forgive the twins. Fred, George, just leave him alone. He has had a harder life than us. Mum isn't making it any easier on him. A boy that he saw as his brother tried to kill him, and a girl who he saw as his sister and believed to have died came back to life, says Charlie. Fred and George were even more annoyed at Percy when he didn't watch their first Quidditch match as beaters. Fred, George, don't be mad at Percy. He's scared of heights, and the bleachers are pretty high up, says Penelope, which calms the twins' anger. You boys are forgetting that Percy can't exactly watch the match. During our first flying lesson, he couldn't even get off of the ground, with how much he trembled on the broom from fear, says Oliver, as he remembers Percy's skin being so white from gripping the broom tightly. December 14th, 2006. Westover Hall, Maine, USA. Grover had Iris message Percy a few days ago about 2 powerful demigods. The wizard had informed his head of house about the situation, and she made a portkey for him so that he could go and help his friend. Grover also Iris messaged Annabeth, Thalia, and they were waiting at the school for Percy to arrive. Grover was waiting outside for the 3 of them, and he was wearing a shirt that said Grunt. As the group entered the school, 2 teachers approached them, and Thalia used the mist in order to make the teachers believe that they were students. Grover pointed out the demigods, who were a pair of siblings named Nico and Bianca D'Angelo. Percy, when are you going to do it? Asks Annabeth as she thinks about Percy's application for MACU SA. I can apply in my 7th year, and my professors are making sure that I am prepared for working in the States. Aside from one bat of a teacher, and I don't mean my potions professor, says Percy. Percy turned to look at the siblings, and they were gone. He turned back to Annabeth, but she was gone as well. Percy went into the hallway, which was where he had last heard the siblings. He saw Bianca protectively holding Nico, and it looked as though she was trying to warn him about something. Percy felt a familiar stab of pain and agony in his shoulder. It was Dr. Thorne, who had thrown the thorn at his shoulder. My poisons don't kill, but it burns, Dr. Thorne whispered into his ear as he forced the group outside. Percy was in agonizing pain, but he had to be brave for the siblings. Percy was trying to contact Grover using their empathy link. As the group got further away from the school, the more worried Percy grew. He wasn't sure if Grover heard his voice through the link, or if it only worked when one of them was sleeping. Dr. Thorne proceeded to explain about a great stirring and how a powerful creature will either destroy or save the world. He explained how the general was going to come and take them. All of a sudden, Percy, Bianca, and Nico were pushed to the ground. Thanks, Annabeth, says Percy as he grabs his wand. Thalia shot lightning at Dr. Thorne, and as he was stumbling about, Percy pulled out his wand. Stupefy, says Percy, stunning the manticore, and then a silver arrow was protruding from Dr. Thorne's shoulder. Permission to kill, my lady? Asked a girl in Old English as Dr. Thorne was stumbling about. Annabeth jumped onto his back. Annabeth, cried Percy, as she fell off of the cliff. He tried to get up, but some girls were holding him down. That is when a figure who was practically radiating in moonlight told him to stand down because he was too weak from the poison to do anything, and she introduced herself as Artemis. The Hunters of Artemis, grumbled Thalia, as a group of 20 or 30-something girls came out of the woods. The girls that were holding Percy down let him get up. My lady, he's a wizard, said a girl with an Old English accent. Suddenly, skeletons appeared before the D'Angelo siblings and bowed. Oh my gods, Percy and Thalia say together as a flaming skull appears over the siblings' head. Hail, Nico and Bianca D'Angelo, the son and daughter of Hades, says Artemis as everyone kneels before the siblings. That means that now there are 4 potential demigods for the prophecy, says Artemis sadly, as Percy and Thalia are once again reminded of the prophecy that now hangs over the heads of 4 children of the Big 3. Percy had found Annabeth's invisibility cap, and he vowed to himself that he would get it back to Annabeth. Grover healed Percy's shoulder. All the while, Nico was peppering him with questions. After a while, Percy had to enter her lady's tent, which apparently no male is allowed to enter. Percy entered the tent, and he saw a girl around 12 sitting in the tent, and she had a deer on her lap. Zoe and Bianca were also in the tent. "Have a seat, Mr. Weasley," says Artemis, and Percy obeyed. "I can understand your confusion. I prefer to appear the same age as my hunters," said Artemis. "Mr. Weasley, you are one of the first wizards and demigod hybrids within the past 2,000 years. "Bianca, have you considered my offer?" said Artemis, as she looked at the young girl. "Bianca, you can come to camp with Thalia and I. You can learn how to use your powers. There are no other children like us." "Thalia and I can do training with you and Nico," says Percy, in a last-ditch effort to convince Bianca to not join the Hunters of Artemis. Bianca decided to join the Hunters of Artemis because she was done with taking care of her little brother. "I, Bianca D'Angelo, pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I turn my back on the company of men, accept eternal maidenhood, and join the hunt." "Perseus, what has happened with your eyesight? Your father has green eyes, yet your eyes are white as the snow," says Artemis, and Percy starts to feel nervous, but he feels a hand placed on his knee, which grounds him. "Lady Artemis, when I was 18 months old, my uncles were murdered in front of me, after a woman by the name of Bellatrix Lestrange threw a curse at me, which hit my eyes and it blinded me," says Percy. Percy hears surprised gasps, and he feels two hands touching the scar. "Molly and Arthur Weasley abandoned me at my Aunt Beryl's house. Thalia took care of me, and when she ran away, she took me with her," says Percy calmly. Then everyone went to bed. In the morning, Apollo arrived, and Percy, "May I try something?" asks Apollo, and Percy feels a hand placed over his eyes. Percy heard some chanting, and then the hand was removed, and Percy saw people looking at him. "Thalia, what's wrong, and why is everyone looking at me?" questions Percy, much to the shock of Thalia and Grover. "Percy, your eyes are green," says Thalia, as she hugs him in shock. As the demigods loaded onto the bus, Artemis approached her twin. "Why did you do that?" questioned Artemis, and Apollo looks at her sadly. "I did it because he had been praying to me to heal his eyes since he was 7 years, and his twin brother got his wounds infected. I did it because he had been praying to me to heal his eyes since he was 7 years, and his twin brothers got his wounds infected. There was a wood lodged in one of his eyes, which copied the effect of his eyes being permanently damaged. He is going to need his eyes in the next few years. His left eye was permanently damaged by the spell, but not the right one," says Apollo. Apollo took the demigods to camp with Thalia driving. Nico held tightly onto Percy, and given how scared he was, Percy didn't mind, since Nico had obviously never been flying before. "Nico, when we get to camp, you can stay in the Poseidon cabin with me. My dad won't be mad, and he is better than Lord Zeus," says Percy. Thalia and Percy explained to Dionysus and Chiron about what had happened, as well as the D'Angelo's parentage. That was when it was announced that there was to be a game of Capture the Flag. The game was fun, except for the fact that Percy and Thalia carry their father's attitude with them, which almost resulted in Percy dumping ice water all over Thalia. Percy was stopped by the arrival of the oracle. 5 shall go west to the goddess in chains, 1 shall be lost in the land without rain. The vein of Olympus shows the trail, campers and hunters combined prevail. The Titan's curse must 1 withstand, and 1 shall perish by a parent's hand. Percy and Grover put the oracle back in the attic, and then it was time for a cabin leader meeting. Many of the cabin leaders had forgotten that it was Percy who had lost the game for them. Zoe had wanted to bring only hunters on the quest, which would ignore the prophecy entirely. "Zoe, as much as you want to bring only hunters on the quest, it will fail, because you can't change the prophecy in order for it to be better for you," says Percy, as he looks close to slapping her upside the head. Campers and hunters have to work together. I have clue I have a clue where they could be. I've seen Luke and Annabeth on Mount Despair in San Francisco, where the Garden of the Hesperides is located. I may not be an American, but I can get us to San Francisco before the solstice, says Percy, annoyed. How so? Questions Zoe suspiciously, as she doesn't believe that a mere boy can do anything. Percy smirked, but he whistled, and his beloved phoenix appeared. This is my phoenix, Poseidon. Phoenixes can carry heavy loads long distances, and they can flash to any location in order to get to where they need to go, says Percy, and the hunters begin to fawn over Poseidon. In the end, Percy could join the quest, and it was decided that Phoebe, Zoe, Bianca, Thalia, and Grover would go on the quest. Percy woke up early the next morning to knocking at his door. He found Blackjack waiting outside for him. Percy changed out of his PJs, grabbed his sword and wand, then he flew off of Blackjack. Percy jumped off of Blackjack, and he saw a group of hippocampi trying to free what looked like a scared mixture between a sea cow and a serpent. Percy untangled the old fishing net, and the animal was set free. Percy had decided to name it Bessie. When Percy returned to camp, he spots Nico at the dining area, and Percy sneaks up on Nico. Nico begs Percy to keep Bianca safe while on the quest, because Phoebe was covered in hives from a shirt laced with centaur blood. Percy follows the group as they drive from Camp Half-Blood to Washington, D.C. The group ends up at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Percy turned himself invisible with his magic, and he follows Thorn into a pirate party. This is when he sees bones sewn into the ground, and out of the ground comes saber-tooth kittens, and the kittens are quickly removed, and more teeth or bones are planted. Then, out of the group come 6 skeletal warriors. They have the creature's smell of piece of silver cloth, and they smell what? Percy ran out, and he ran into Zoe, who was pointing an arrow at him. He managed to explain to them what had happened. All of a sudden, the Nemean lion was in the museum, and everyone was trying to defeat it, when Percy had an idea. Get out of the way, said Percy, so he could get the right shot. Everyone moved out of the way, but they weren't sure why. Fiend fire, says Percy, as his wand is pointed towards the mouth of the Nemenian lion. In an instant, the Nemenian lion was burned from the inside out. Soon enough, all that remained was a coat. Percy, cries Thalia, as she and Bianca catch Percy, while Grover feeds him ambrosia. Allow us high, and we carry this mail with us, says Zoe, as Grover carries Percy on his back, with Percy fading in and out of consciousness. When Percy woke up, they were in New Mexico. What was that? Asked Bianca, confused, when she saw that he was awake. That was Fiend Fire, which is a powerful spell that even the most powerful witches and wizards have a hard time controlling. I am lucky all I did was pass out, said Percy, with a smile, as he sat up under his Nemenian lion coat. Percy and Thalia defeated the Erymanthian boar, and they got a ride to a dumpster. Percy was seated between Grover and Thalia in order to ensure that he wouldn't fall off, as he was still somewhat weak from the spell. As the group arrived at a dumpster, a limo pulled up. Ares stepped out of the limo, and he forced Percy into the limo, which is where Percy met Aphrodite. Her appearance made her look like Annabeth. The group was warned not to pick up anything in the dumpster, because it was discarded by her husband Hephaestus. The group talked for a little while, and Bianca mentioned that she and Nico had stayed in the Lotus Hotel and Casino. Bianca proves that she is from another era because she says that the current president is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and she looks at her husband. She looks at her hands frantically in order to see whether or not she had liver spots. The group proceeded to walk through the dump, and they were attacked by Talos. Fractostera, cries Percy, as a powerful bolt of lightning strikes the heel of Talos, which is his weakness point. The electricity causes the creature to fall. It's all my fault, says Bianca, as she reveals a mythologic statue of Hades. It's an apology gift for Nico, she explains, but Percy has already forgiven her. The group found a truck and they travel until the truck runs out of fuel. Zoe, Bianca, and Percy share a canoe. Zoe glares at the naiads and they get talking until Percy brings out Riptide. Zoe is surprised at the sight of Riptide. You made this? Percy said as he remembers his demigod dreams about seeing Heracles and Zoe. It was a gift and a mistake, says Zoe. Percy concludes that her mother was a water spirit, and Zoe tells him the story about the 5 Hesperides, as well as how it was banished from her family. Soon enough, the canoes arrive at the Hoover Dam. 700 feet tall and built in the 1930s, says Percy fondly. 5 million cubic gallons of water, says Thalia with a hint of a smirk. Largest construction project in the United States, says Grover. Zoe looks at them like they're crazy. How do you know that? Asks Zoe, and the trio looks at one another. Annabeth, she likes architecture, and she was nuts about monuments. We should go up there for her sake, says Thalia, and the group enter the Hoover Dam. Nico would love this, says Bianca, with a faint smile, as she thinks about her little brother. Percy, did you hear a moo? Asked Bianca to her cousin. Thalia seemed to have heard it as well, and the group saw Bessie in the water below them. Suddenly, they heard the sound of chittering skeletons once more. The 3 demigods crash into a girl that is blowing her nose. Percy Weasley, 4th year, says the girl to Percy, and he nods his head. Name's Rachel Dare, 4th year at Ilvermorny Institute of Magic. Confund us. There is no one here, says Rachel, and the skeletons left. Percy, Bianca, and Talia came out from the boys' bathroom. Cause a distraction, says Rachel, as she leaves to go to another part of the Hoover Dam. Bianca, Thalia, and Percy ran back to his friends and told them that the skeletons were back. Grover and Zoe started a food fight as a cover so that the group could escape, but not before a boy with curly hair got Thalia on the butt with a shot of guacamole. The group ran over the massive bronze statue, and Thalia prayed to Zeus for a safe passage to San Francisco. Her prayers were answered, and the bronze statue flew them to San Francisco. The group had to search for Nereus in order to find the creature what Artemis was hunting. Percy and Nereus fought. When Nereus had transformed into a dolphin, Percy saw a boy with blonde hair and a scar on his lip. Bessie? Bessie, cries Percy when he saw that Artemis was hunting the Ophiuchus. Thorn and his men had surrounded them. Grover took Bessie to Mount Olympus, and Percy sacrificed his coat to Poseidon in order for his friends to have safe passage. Percy created an iris message, and Dionysus made Thorn's men made. Poseidon, come here, my faithful bird, said Percy, as his phoenix appears. Everyone form a chain, and Poseidon can fly us to Mount Despair, says Percy, and the 4 demigods fly to Mount. Later, Artemis, go and help Zoe, said Percy, as he started to take the weight of the world from the goddess, and she quickly jumped into the fight in order to help her lieutenant. Percy held the weight of the world for several minutes, and he was starting to black out from the pain. Percy watched as Luke fell off the cliff, and Thalia had fallen to her knees crying. Move, Perseus, said Artemis, as Percy felt a body slide next to his. Percy moved, and that was when he passed out. My lady, help Perseus, and I can see the stars, says Zoe, as she utters her final words. Percy, cries Bianca. Thalia and Annabeth, as the 4 women rushed aside. Artemis gave Percy some godly healing. Girls, help me get Perseus onto my chariot. We shall ride to Olympus together, says Artemis. The three demigods got Percy into the chariot as it raced to Olympus. Apollo was waiting for them, and he healed Percy once more. He is to return to his school as soon as possible. His magical core is depleted, says Apollo, as Poseidon lands on his human shoulder. This is Poseidon. She is Percy's pet phoenix, says Annabeth. As the four demigods and two gods arrive in the throne room, Percy gave Annabeth back her invisibility cap, which she was grateful for. The gods held a vote as to whether or not Thalia, Bianca, Nico, and Percy should be executed in order to prevent the prophecy from coming true. Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon both disagree with the notion. Thalia joined the Hunters of Artemis. As the meeting concluded, the gods held a party. Annabeth, do you want to become my girlfriend? Asks Percy, to which Annabeth responds with a kiss as well as yes. Percy spotted Nico and Bianca talking. It seems as though Nico forgives his sister for abandoning him. Perseus, I am proud of you for allowing my brother's son to stay in your cabin, says Poseidon as he and Percy talk. Percy, you must watch out for your mother, for she will try to force you to stay in England, says Poseidon as he worries for his mortal son. I understand, father. Molly and Arthur have never been able to take me because of how many kids they have. Their kids require constant attention, says Percy. December 24th, 2006. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland. Poseidon sent Percy back to Hogwarts a day after the students left for their winter holidays. Percy was happy that Charlie remained at Hogwarts instead of the twins, and Charlie was even happier that Percy could see out of one eye. Percy told Charlie about the quest that he was on, and his brother was proud of him for helping the siblings to see one another once again. Percy, I'm going to work in Romania at a dragon's reserve, says Charlie to his brother on Christmas morning as they open their presents, most of which were for Percy from his friends at camp. As the brothers were enjoying one another's company, the shadows in the great hall began to shift, and two people fell out of the shadows. Where are we? Asked the two individuals, and the teachers gathered the 15 students behind them, but Percy approached them. Nico, Bianca, how'd you get to Scotland? Asks Percy in shock. Just then the rest of the hunters arrive. Artemis was with them. Bianca and Nico, I think it is best if you focus on shadow travelling from one cabin or tent to another. You landed in my school's dining hall, says Percy, in fake annoyance toward the siblings. My lady, may we stay here while Bianca and Nico recover? Asks Thalia, as Phoebe had died at camp from the centaur blood-soaked shirt. You are more than welcome to stay, as long as you need to, says Dumbledore, as he fixed a broken table. So, Percy, who are these kids? Asked Charlie curiously to his brother. Charlie, meet my cousins, Thalia, Bianca, and Nico. Bianca and Nico are sister and brother, while Thalia has a younger brother. Thalia, Nico, and Bianca, meet my brother, Charlie, says Percy. His cousins were happy to meet his half-brother. Percy told me about you and Bill when he was on the run with me. He talked fondly about you and Bill, says Thalia. Lady Artemis, we could teach some of your hunters how to control their magic. Some of the young ladies in your numbers are daughters of Hecate, says Minerva. Yes, thank you. I fear that with Kronos rising, that we need to use all of our available resources, says Artemis to the teachers. Who is the prophesied hero? Asks Phileas, curiously. Perseus Weasley. Hera has been bothering my brother for some time about another potential prophecy that concerns both of our aspects, the Greek and the Romans, says Artemis. We will stay out of your wars, says Dumbledore, as he has no intention of joining a war involving immortal beings. My uncle Lord Hades has heard about Tom Riddle, and he is still annoyed that he has escaped the underworld, meaning that he will return someday, says Artemis. Aside from what happened during Christmas, the rest of the school year was normal, with Percy once again refusing to go back to the burrow. Percy was ready to see his girlfriend once more. Percy got iris messages from Bianca and Thalia as well as Nico. The four children of the Big Three kept in contact with one another in order to ensure that none of them fell under Kronos' spell. For Percy, he was dreading when his younger half-brother attended Hogwarts, because Ron was a mummy's boy. It didn't help that she filled both Ron and Jenny's heads with thoughts of meeting or marrying Harry Potter. Before the end of the school year, Hades discovered important information So he visited his nephew in a dream. Perseus, the man that you know as Tom Riddle is in fact my son. He has never been to Camp Half-Blood, says Hades, and Percy informs his cousins, as the four demigods understood the information. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21, Chapter 7. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York, June 4th, 2007. Percy had just returned from meeting up with Rachel, as they had been owling each other during the school and they had agreed to meet at a coffee shop. Don't you see them? Hissed Rachel as they poke their head as they poke her head from behind the door. That is when Percy saw two girls wearing cheerleader outfits with bronze and donkey legs. It looks as though they were searching for him. Bloody hell, thought Percy, as he and Rachel left the bathroom. Percy Weasley, we have been waiting for you, said one of the girls, as she showed off her teeth. Percy briefly felt as though she was trying to place him under a spell. Percy and Rachel ran out of Starbucks, with the imposer following after them. Soon enough, Rachel and Percy were cornered between a dumpster and the monsters. Percy swung at the one wearing a jacket that said, "Hi demigod scum, my name is Kelly," and with a burst of flame she died. As her friend got ready to attack Percy, the other was stabbed by a bronze knife. Annabeth got to him and grabbed his wrist. "Let's go to camp," cried Annabeth, as they got into a cab and Percy called to Rachel. "I'll call you later," and Annabeth gave him a pissed look, which brought them to camp, and Annabeth forgave him once he explained to her about how he met Rachel last winter. Annabeth and Percy attended Grover's hearing with the Council of Elders. Clarice was there, as well as with Grover's girlfriend Jennifer. Percy met an old camper named Quintus and his pet hellhound, Miss O'Leary, and she is an absolute sweetheart. Percy reunited with Tyson, who he hadn't seen in a year. Tyson was cleaning the cabin for inspections, and he had also hung a bronze chandelier of hippocampi. Tyson was happy when he found out that the shield that he had made for Percy saved his life during the winter. As they were headed for the dining area, Tyson asked about the scar in the ground, and Percy told him in a whisper about Nico, and that Nico had caused it accidentally when he was learning to use his powers. Later that evening, they were doing a training exercise with everyone in teams of 2. Grover was with Tyson, while Annabeth and Percy were together. The first to find the laurel wreaths were the winners. Annabeth and Percy were cornered by 3 scorpions, in which they fell into a tunnel, and it wasn't until they heard Tyson calling their names that they left the tunnel. It turns out that instead of a few minutes, it had been an hour. "It's the labyrinth," says Charon, as the campers dispersed to return to their cabins because it was past curfew. In the morning, Annabeth sat with Percy at the Poseidon cabin table, which was against the rules. Annabeth went up to the attic and received her prophecy. "You shall delve in the darkness of the endless maze, the dead, the trailer, and the lost one raise. You shall rise or fall by the Ghost King's hand, the child of Athena's final stand, destroy with a hero's final breath, and lose a love so worse than death." Annabeth decided to take 3 questers with her, Percy along with Grover and Tyson. When the group entered the labyrinth, they met Hera, who acted as though they were all one big happy family. Percy glared at her, and the questers continued on with their quest, after Hera gave them advice about the quest. Soon enough, they were on their way again, and that is when they stumble upon a sphinx who made Annabeth compete in the trivia game. They destroyed her grading machine and ran away, which led them to meeting the 100-handed one and his jailer, Percy won a game of rock, paper, scissors against him by using a gun. The group escaped Alcatraz, and they ended up at a farm with red cows. That is where they saw Nico again. Percy cleaned the stables of the man-eating horses with help from a helpful naiad, and he shot an arrow through Grayon. Afterwards, Percy sacrificed a piece of meat to Apollo and Artemis. Nico was seeking advice from Minos, so they summoned his ghost, and the questers followed a mechanical spider back to the workshop of Hephaestus. After the god gave them a little side quest, then they were once again on their way. The group split up because Grover believed that he had found the god Pan, and Tyson went with him, while Annabeth and Percy went to Hephaestus' workshop, which was under Mount St. Helens. Percy made Annabeth get out of the workshop, and Annabeth kissed Percy on the lips before she left. Percy blew up Mount St. Helens. When Percy woke up, he had landed on the island of Calypsos, and he returned to the Muggle world. And he arrived at camp just as his funeral started, and Annabeth is pissed at him. Quintus gives Percy a whistle to summon Mrs. O'Leary, which was from the River Styx, and it could only be used once. Aphrodite was mad at him because she flashed a message to Rachel about meeting, so off Percy and Annabeth went to meet Rachel, and she was a gold statue. As it turns out, Rachel was raising money to save the arts for a local school. The group went to the basement of an old building where it was revealed that Rachel had found the symbols of Daedalus. The group found Nico, and he was captured by Luke's men. So Luke's men captured them, and Percy is forced to fight against his giant half-brother. His mother is Gaia, cries Annabeth before her mouth is covered as Antonius attacked him. Percy defeated his brother by hanging him from the ground. The group escapes and they fly away using wings when they found Daedalus' workshop, which looked as though it was visited rather recently. When they land, they see a disturbing sight, which is Ethan pledging his allegiance to Kronos, and that is when Kronos rises and Rachel hits him right between the eyes with the blue hairbrush. As the group runs away, that is when they find Grover and Tyson, as well as the lost god, Pan bless them. Percy promises to make a difference in the wizarding world. The group returns to the surface, and Percy summons some Pegasi to fly them back to camp. The 3 demigods, 1 Cyclops and 1 Satyr, make it back to camp as the battle begins. Everyone fights their hardest, and with the help of Daedalus, the campers temporarily defeat Kronos' army, but not without casualties. Pollux, son of Dionysus, dies in battle, leaving behind his twin brother, and Daedalus fades as well, but not before giving Annabeth his laptop, which years, if not decades ahead of its time. Nico visits Percy for his birthday at camp, which is when they discuss an idea that will help in the war against Kronos. September 1st, 2007. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. During the sorting, Percy wasn't paying attention as a red-haired boy, Weasley Ronald, said McGonagall, and Percy listened as the hat was placed on the head of his half-brother. After what felt like an eternity, the hat called out, "Gryffindor," and Ron rushed over the table, sitting not that far from the twins, or from Percy. Percy smiled at Penelope as he listened to a new Gryffindor by the name of Hermione Granger rapidly talk about the subjects that she was excited to learn. Percy absolutely hated Quirrell, but he pretended to be the perfect student while he was making battle strategies for the up-and-coming ball. Percy was made a prefect, as well as Penelope and Marcus, who helped him in sword practice, which made him feel more ready for the battle. On Halloween, Percy noticed that Ron and Harry weren't with him, nor was Hermione Granger, so Percy went to search for them. That was when Percy heard a loud, manly squeal, and he made his way outside and into the pouring rain. He could make out the shadow of a massive pig. He also saw girls in silver attempting to kill the creature. "Bombarda!" cries Percy as the sound of a tree being knocked over startles the creatures. "Quickly, girls, use the net arrows," says Thalia as the hunters of Artemis captured the Athenian boar. "Thanks, Percy," says Thalia as she and Bianca greet their cousin. "No problem, Thals and Bea, but you better run before the groundkeeper comes," says Percy as he makes his way back into the school. He sees the hunters leaving, and he's back in the common room where everyone has already gone to bed. Percy didn't bother attending the Quidditch match the next morning since he was tired because Fred and George set off explosions at midnight, which led to Percy cleaning up their mess. Percy finally fell asleep at 6 a.m. just as Oliver woke up, and he kept quiet so Percy could sleep a few more hours. Percy woke up by 2 p.m. and he decided to explore the third floor corridor. Behind the door, he found a sad dog whining. "Hi, Cerberus, how you doing?" coos Percy as he pets the massive mastiff. The dog recognized him and he welcomed the pets. "Percy, my boy, what on earth are you doing here?" asks Dumbledore curiously, as he looks surprised to see Percy here. "Well, Headmaster, I was curious, so I decided to come up here, and the last time I saw Cerberus was on my first quest." "Where did you get my uncle's dog, Headmaster?" asked Percy curiously to his headmaster. "I have set up a test for Mr. Potter, and I believe that one of my teachers is possessed with the spirit of Voldemort. Percy, are you ready for your final battle? I talked with MACUSA, and they have agreed to not intervene in godly matters," says Dumbledore. The match ended at the same time as Percy and Dumbledore's conversation. It was easy to note that all but one resident of the Gryffindor Tower hated Percy. Oliver did his best to stop the tower from casting hexes and curses at Percy since he refused to attend the game. Everyone believed the lies that Fred, George, and Ron were saying about Percy. Percy couldn't defeat himself because he was hunting down Kronos. Percy couldn't defend himself because he was hunting down Kronos' supporters, who were Death Eaters, even though they lied under oath. On December 6th, there was a commotion in the entrance hall as a group of girls stormed the Great Hall. "Who are you and why are you here?" asks Severus, and he acted as though he was going to save the school. Percy approached the girls and began to speak in a mysterious language. Then a girl with olive skin whistled and a massive 3-headed dog stormed into the Great Hall. "Thanks, Percy. Father's been looking for Cerberus since August, but he didn't want to tell you your father or Thalia's father," says the olive-skinned girl. Cerberus shared down to the size of a cat. "Stay safe, Percy," says the olive-skinned girl, as well as girl with black hair. "You as well, Falzenbeer. Also, Headmaster Dumbledore, I would suggest that you never kidnap another mythological creature, or else you will have to face my wrath," threatens Percy. A massive crack of thunder, which made the castle shake, showed that Percy wasn't messing around. "What the bloody hell, Percy? Mama's going to be so pissed at you that she will remove you from here," threatens Ron, and he goes on a spiral which he had been brainwashed into learning since birth. All of a sudden, Ron stopped talking, and he began to make strangled gurgling sounds. "That is enough, Ronald. I am not Molly's son, nor will I ever see you, Frederick, Gideon, or Minerva as my siblings. As far as I'm concerned, Bill and Charlie are my only siblings, with Molly and Arthur, while I have incredible cousins and half-siblings," says Percy as Ron is released from control. The group of girls leave, and everyone fears Percy for the power that he holds. The teachers fear him more than the students, as he doesn't act students unless they attack him first. December 20th, 2007. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Scotland, United Kingdom. Percy is walking around the quiet ground when he sees Mrs. O'Leary roaming the grounds as he approaches her. As if by magic, Percy is on her back, and then he is in a New York alley. Percy sees a golden deer, and he pulls out his sword, only for Thalia and Bianca to appear. The huntresses and the demi-wizard stared at one another before a shadow appeared, and out tumbled Nico. "Is this New York? I was just at a graveyard at New Orleans," commented Nico. "Someone brought the 4 of us together, the children of the big 3 gods," said Percy, and all 3 of them knew about the prophecy that is being held over Percy's head. All of a sudden, the ground opens up, and the 4 demigods are falling and screaming until they land in a familiar garden. They keep screaming until they abruptly stop when a figure approaches them. It is Persephone, and she looks like an old, faded image of spring. "You turned me into a dandelion," cries Nico as Persephone apologizes for their little family spat. Bianca looked ready to attack Persephone for turning her brother into a dandelion. "I've summoned you demigods here for a quest, because it concerns Hades' sword," says Persephone, as the four demigods looked at one another. "Lady Persephone, Lord Hades doesn't have a sword," said Percy, and that is when Persephone showed the children an image of a zombie forging a sword with a key. "Not yet, son of Poseidon. Someone has taken the sword before it was completed, and if the thief escapes the underworld, then all the souls will be out of control," said Persephone. Those are the keys to the underworld. It can lock and unlock any entrance or exit in the underworld. Use this flower to track the thief. When all of the petals fall off, that means that the thief has escaped," said Persephone. Percy takes the flower pot, and it points them in the direction of the field of punishment, where they met Sisyphus. Thalia and Bianca offered to push his boulder up the hill while he talked with Percy and Nico. In the end, Sisyphus got crushed by his own boulder, which the demigods saw as poetic justice. The group were attacked by Ceres while trying to get more information about the whereabouts of the sword. Percy felt a pain in his shoulders and an almost blinding pain in his leg. The Ceres had severed his leg and clawed his shoulder. Thalia and Nico held him down while Bianca poured nectar on the wound, which caused him to wither in pain even more, while a ghost with cinnamon hair saw them. Soon enough, the group reached the leave. Percy strained his powers in order to keep his cousins dry, since one drop would have erased their memories. When it was Percy's turn to cross, the water landed on him, yet he retained his memories. The group eventually cornered Ethan, Nakamura, and Lafettes, with Percy wiping the Titan's memories, and then he was named Bob. Bob healed Percy's shoulder, but he was unable to heal Percy's right leg. But he stopped the bleeding, and the group returned to Hades' palace. Hades was at his wife, Kate, but the demigods were soon enough allowed to return home. "Perseus, when the war is over, I will request Hephaestus to make you a prosthetic leg. I fear that my son has taken control of one of your teachers. Beware of your defense against the dark arts professor," warned Hades. Everyone remained frightened, but the year continued as normal, with Percy leaving to attend his camp. Percy was ready for the final battle against his evil grandfather. He was determined to survive regardless of what happened. Molly and Arthur had once more tried to convince Percy to come home, but they were unsuccessful in the fruitless task. Poseidon flashed Percy to camp as soon as Molly and Arthur tried to approach him. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21. Chapter 8. The Last Olympian. August 10th, 2008. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York. Percy point of view. I am practicing my sword fighting against a dummy as Beckendorf came to get me for our final attack. We were going to attack the Princess Andromeda, which was heading for New York. It was carrying a couple thousand monsters. If we could destroy the ship, then we would weaken some of Cronus' force. "Are you ready, Percy?" asked Beckendorf as he helped me climb onto Blackjack before we flew off into the afternoon sun. "Percy, if I don't make it, could you please tell Selena that I love her to the end?" asked Beckendorf, and I said what I thought was right. "Beckendorf, we're gonna get you back." Which made him smile. We flew for hours. The nerves and anxiety was growing in my gut, but I pushed it down because I had to focus on the mission. Soon enough, I could see the familiar shape of the Princess Andromeda. "Boss, are you sure about this?" asked Blackjack. "Get out of here, Blackjack. We'll see you back at camp," I say as he drops us off on the deck, and he flies away into the night sky. The Princess Andromeda was cruising just outside of New Jersey. "Let's split up, and I'll meet you back here in 30 minutes, says Beckendorf as we split up. I quickly grabbed my bag of Greek fire bombs and made my way down to the engine room. I attached the bombs to several parts of the engines. Before I quietly and quickly made my way back to the upper decks. I placed bombs along the way. Any monsters that I came across, I quickly got rid of. It had been almost 30 minutes, and I got back to the top deck, which is where I saw Beckendorf being held hostage by several monsters. My attacks against Cronus were slowed by his manipulation of the natural flow of time. Percy, surrender, and I will spare your mortal family, as well as giving them all the riches that they deserve, says Cronus. Never, Cronus. I will never surrender, and as far as I'm concerned, the Weasleys have never been my true family. What happened? What happened to the boy that I saw as an elder brother? I say sadly. Cronus gave off a hearty laugh, which broke the last love that I had held for Luke into a million little pieces. He is dead, and he will never come back. Surrender, Perseus, and I won't bring the wizarding world into this, says Cronus, but I stand my ground. Beckendorf points at his watch, which is the detonator for all of the bombs that we had placed all over the ship. A monster dumps his bag on the ground, which only has cans of peaches. The monsters were angry at him, and Beckendorf presses the button. Jump off the ship, and as the darkness surrounds me, the last thoughts that I have is, Beckendorf, I'm sorry. Before I lost consciousness. I'm not sure how long I've been unconscious for, but when I opened my eyes, I saw Tyson standing over me. Yeah, your brain works, cries Tyson, and that is when I noticed that I was underwater and in my dad's palace. Where's Beckendorf? I asked, as I hoped that he had somehow managed to survive the explosion. My leg that the Hephaestus cabin made for me was gone. I had a wooden leg in my cabin, which could be used as a replacement until after the war. Tyson looked at me sadly, and that is when I knew my answer. Let's go find Daddy, says Tyson, as we saw to a courtyard towards the battle. I was trying to find a man wearing a Hawaiian t-shirt. That is when a bolt of green light hit a creature. There's Daddy, says Tyson, as the creature turned into a school of fish. A man swam towards us. Percy, I know this is not how you normally would see me, but my war against Oceanus has been a trying battle. Oceanus has brought monsters from the depths of the ocean, so ancient that even I have forgotten how to fight them. My son, do you still have my present? Asked Poseidon. I lifted my cabin necklace out of my shirt collar, and he gave me. I lifted my cabin necklace out of my shirt collar, and he gave me a happy smile. When he saw the gift was still there. You know when to use it, my son, said Poseidon, as two more figures in armor arrived. One of them was half man and half dolphin, while the other, a female, looked almost like my father. Dolphin have the Cyclops increase weapon production. Our weapons are being destroyed faster than we can use it. Aphrodite, my dear wife, have any of your sisters sided with your father? Asked Poseidon. My lord, none of my sisters have joined my father's side, and many of them have agreed to spy on father for us, said Aphrodite. As she left, Poseidon looked at me. My son, you must return to camp and see the prophecy, said Poseidon, before he had to go and fight another monster. As I swam back to camp, I took one last look at my father as he created a mass of green light. I made it back to camp as fast as I could, and Connor Stoll was the first to spot me arriving on the beach. As other campers ran towards me, I had to find Selena. Selena, I am so sorry, I say, before the head of the Aphrodite cabin breaks down into tears, and Clarice walks her to the big house, for a chocolate. Connor Stoll handed me my wooden leg, which was cleverly hidden under my robes at Hogwarts. Camp had changed so much since my first summer. Now campers were leaving for missions that were almost suicide, and very few would return. Annabeth hugged me, and we walked to the big house. We went to the attic in order to retrieve the prophecy that was made 70 years ago by the Oracle of Delphi. As Annabeth and I descended down the stairs, all cabin councillors were there waiting for me to read the prophecy. Our half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds, and see the world in endless sleep. The hero soul, Crestblade, shall reap. A A single choice shall end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise. When with the prophecy read and Beckendorf's shroud was burned, Mrs. O'Leary greeted me by licking me, and it felt as though I was being licked by a massive sponge with how rough her tongue felt. That is when I saw Nico, and he was arguing with an old satyr. I threatened Linnaeus because he was being stubborn and overall a rude old goat, which was starting to piss me off. I grabbed the Linnaeus by his too small shirt. Listen, Linnaeus, when Cronus attacks, he is going to have packs of hellhounds, so stop being a stubborn, stupid old goat. Find Grover and bring Juniper some news. Now go, I said, and I smirked as he ran away. Percy, you know why I'm here, said Nico seriously, and I knew it was because he wanted to know if I had accepted his deal. I accept, I said, because it would be the only way that I would survive and get to spend another day with my family, which was everyone at camp and maybe Harry. We have to go and visit Luke's mom, said Nico, and when I started to suggest that we take the Pegasi, he instantly disapproved the idea because the Pegasi hated him, and we had instead taken Mrs. O'Leary. Westport, Connecticut, August 13, 2008. Luke's childhood home. As we arrived at the house, I was surprised by it, since I had lived my house in a rather unique house, which was held together by magic. Okay. As we walked up the driveway, I saw all toys of different Greek monsters, which freaked me out. Luke, you've returned, said a woman as she opened the door, and it looked as though she enjoyed sticking stuff into electric outlets for fun. In the kitchen, I saw piles and piles of plastic containers filled with mouldy sandwiches, burnt cookies, and juice. Nico and I left, but that is when we saw a young girl around the age of 8, and she's surrounded by wonderful food. Nico D'Angelo and Percy Weasley, please have a seat, she says, and I sacrificed a portion of my meal to the gods, and that is when it was revealed that she is the goddess Hestia. Perseus, Molly and Arthur Weasley have plans to remove your memory of being a demigod, as well as suppressing your powers, says Hestia, and I frowned in annoyance, as they have never paid attention to me until we began having screaming matches at platform 9 3/4. I no longer see them as family, and I have sworn on the river Styx to never forgive my younger brothers, I say. When Nico and I had finished eating, she disappeared, and it was just us and Mrs. O'Leary. Nico, whatever happens during the war, I need you to tell my brothers Bill and Charlie that I'm sorry and that I love them. I say, and Nico promises to do so for me in case I die. Nico and I land in Central Park. We find Grover sleeping in a tree, and he had been sleeping for months because of the god Morpheus. Grover helps us open Orpheus's tunnel to the underworld. Good luck, Perce, he said before running off in order to find Juniper. Nico and I made it to the underworld, but then it is revealed that Nico was doing it under his father's orders, so that he could learn more about his mother. I'm locked in a jail cell, which is made for dead people. I hear a German screaming in the cell next to me, and I would occasionally hear the sound of gas being released. I sleep for a bit, and Nico helps me escape. We manage to get down to the edge of the river Styx. When we are confronted by Achilles, the famous hero warns us against going into the river, because it caused his ultimate demise with an arrow to the heel. I jumped into the river, and it feels as though my entire body is melting into treacle. I focus on my weak point, and I made it the small of my back. When I get out of the river, Nico rushes to feed me nectar and ambrosia, which helps my bright red skin. Soon enough, I have to fight against Hades, and I manage to control the river and sweep away much of his army. I get out of the underworld, and we iris message Annabeth. She and every other camper, except for the Ares cabin, is waiting for us at the Empire State Building. The mortals are all asleep, and Annabeth brings out the video shield, and we see Cronus' army is arriving through water. We make our way up to Mount Olympus, and we see that all of Manhattan is asleep. As we make our way back down, I give each cabin either a bridge or a tunnel to protect, and the hunters of Artemis arrive to take the last bridge. No keeping the phones, I say, as I, along with everyone else, looks at the Hermes cabin, and they slump in defeat over having their thieving ways removed before they could do anything. Bianca and Thalia made their way over to me. "Percy, what do you want us to do?" asks Bianca. "Bianca, summon armies of skeletons, as many as you can handle without collapsing. While Thalia, I want you to create an electrical field over Manhattan. The electrical field will kill the weaker monsters, and it will weaken Kronos," I say. "We got this, Percy. Aniko is sorry that he allowed our father to capture you, but he doesn't remember our mother, and he wants to know more about her," says Bianca, as the demigods go in their separate directions. Annabeth and I make our 2 point where the East and Hudson rivers meet, and I make a deal with the river gods to sink any vehicles carrying monsters. Each side of the river is given half of the sand dollar to help clean it up, even marginally. Annabeth and I make our way to the Williamsburg Bridge in order to help the Apollo cabin. We arrive in time to see the bridge covered in numerous holes. "Apollo cabin, fall back," I called as all but one of them got off the bridge in a hurried fashion. I then turned back to the monsters. I'm fighting several dozen monsters at once, and that is when I hear a terrified scream, and I see that Annabeth had taken a knife for me, exactly where my weak spot was. I felt a wave of anger rush through me, which sent a wave of water over the bridge. Will Solis quickly takes Annabeth to our base of operations, as the rest of the Apollo campers run to get off of the bridge, when I stab Riptide through the pavement of the bridge. Water shoots out of the cracks, and the water creates a curtain, and when it is gone, I can faintly see Kronos' troops. I see the Apollo cabins, but their cabin leader, Michael Hughes, is not with them, and that is when I remember that was shooting arrows at the retreating army while I destroyed the bridge. I pushed a sleeping motorcyclist off of his motorcycle, and I drove as fast as I could to the Plaza Hotel, with the rest of the Apollo cabin following me in a car that they found. Kayla Cowles gave me directions to get to the hotel. I rushed to the makeshift infirmary area. Will had just finished treating Annabeth. "Will, I'm sorry, but Michael didn't make it," I said, and the 12-year-old demigod just nodded his head before finding the rest of his half-siblings. The hunters of Artemis arrived with Bianca and Thalia being carried. I rushed to give my cousins nectar and ambrosia. They opened their eyes soon after. "Percy, what happened?" asked Bianca nervously, as the hunters helped the other injured demigods. The Apollo cabin was overrun with monsters. Annabeth and I made our way over to the bridge. Annabeth saved my life by taking a poisoned dagger to where my Achilles heel is. I say to my cousins, "Percy, get some rest. I know that you haven't slept in a week at this point," says Will, as he tucks me in between my cousins, and in an instant I am fast asleep. I took a nap, and when I woke up, Annabeth was awake as well. Thalia, Grover, and I had a talk with Prometheus, in which I was given Pandora's jar. We hid for some of the satyrs, then a massive army of monsters was marching towards Central Park. I rallied the demigods together, and we marched as one, and we formed a makeshift shield at Central Park. "No matter what happens, everyone, it has been an honor to fight with you," I say as the monsters attack. Hyperion is leading the group, and at some point in the battle, I lost Riptide, but I see a pond. I use the water in order to form a hurricane in order to stop Hyperion's attacks, with help from Grover and the satyr. Hyperion becomes a tree, but while he was defeated, that left several hundred monsters. I pull out my wand, and I think of the most powerful spell that I know. I point my wand at the monsters. "Demigods, get away! Avada Kedavra!" I cry as the green spell erupts from my wand. I felt hands on my arms, which only fuels the spell even more as it channels all of our combined sadness, anger, rage, and panic into producing a powerful spell that destroys the monsters. It leaves me feeling incredibly weak. I feel like I am collapsing as Grover and Thalia feed me ambrosia and nectar. Everyone get back to the hotel and bring all the injured to the Empire State Building. That is where the last stand will happen, and no matter what happens, we will stand together, I say. While my fellow demigods and I run to the Empire State Building, I see a helicopter starting to crash, and two figures jump out. I quickly say Wingardia Leviosa in order to slow them down. It's Rachel Dare, and she has her wand ready. Soon enough, a Dracon appears, and Rachel tells me, Percy, it can be defeated by a child of Ares. And soon enough, the Ares cabin arrives, and Clarice starts fighting the monsters. Then the real Clarice arrives, as the other Clarice collapses, and it's revealed that it's Selena. Selena shows to all of us that she was the traitor. We all agree that she died a hero. Clarice defeats the Dracon. Soon enough, the final push began. Karen was injured by rubble, and the party ponies had run off somewhere to find root beer. Kronos and his remaining monsters approached our army that surrounded the Empire State Building. The mortals began to wake up, but Hades and Nico arrived at the same time. Hello, father, says Hades, and he looks as though he has waited over 2,000 years to say that, which he probably did. Perseus, take Bianca, Annabeth, Nico, Thalia, and Grover to fight my father on Olympus, says Hades, as he summons thousands of zombies to fight the Titan, which gave the demigods a little breathing room. The four children of the big three, as well as Annabeth and Grover, made their way to Olympus. Thalia pushed Annabeth out of the way of a falling statue, but the statue trapped her instead. I duel Kronos, and I am not backing down. Nico and Bianca summoned skeletons to help their father. I hear a mighty roar from the Hudson River, and just moments later, the gods flash into the room. I manage to disarm Luke, and I have him at sword point. It's over, Luke, I say, and Annabeth hands me her dagger. This is when I remember a certain line in the prophecy. The hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. Luke had promised Annabeth that he would always protect her, and he had failed. I give him the dagger, and he stabs his weak spot. The gods appear in their armor, expecting to see two demigods fighting. The demigods who were on the streets are now on Olympus. The gods give us rewards for our hard work. Grover is made Lord of the Wild. Thalia and Bianca will have more hunters. Tyson is a general in the Cyclops army. Annabeth became the official architect of Olympus. Perseus Weasley, cries Poseidon, as Bianca and Nico help me to kneel in front of the gods. I get offered immortality, but I insist not force the gods to accept their demigods by the age of 13, and to also have cabins for minor gods and Hades. Then I hear the worst possible news. Rachel has taken Blackjack, and she has entered camp. We arrive at camp, and Rachel becomes the new oracle. Her first prophecy is given. 7 half-bloods shall answer the call. To storm or fire, the world must fall. An oath to keep with a final breath, and foes bear arms to the doors of death. So, Annie, shall we? I ask my beautiful girlfriend, as we share a deep kiss with one another. When did you start dating? Clarice basically screams at us, as the campers stare at us in shock. We started dating after the quest where we met Bianca and Nico, I say. The Hephaestus cabin crafts me a new leg, which makes getting around a lot easier. I was ready for my 6th year at Hogwarts, and I was ready to be graduating from Hogwarts soon. I had a feeling that the gods weren't done with messing up with our lives anytime soon. 2 days before I was to return to England for my 6th year, I received a red envelope. Cover your ears, I say, before Molly's voice explodes from the envelope. Percival Ignatius Weasley, I am your mother, and you shall do as I say, which does mean that you will be returning to the borough for Christmas holidays. I have allowed you to have your own way for far too long. When you finish your 7th year, Arthur has gotten you a position in his department at the Ministry of Magic. You are to cut off all contact with your mudblood friends and get married to a nice witch, screams Molly. All of the campers look horrified at how loud she was. Percy, was that banshee? Jokes Will, which leads to the demigods laughing because Molly sounds like a banshee. Once the laughter had settled down, Karen stood up. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21. Chapter 9. Half of Scythia and the Son of Neptune. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound, New York, August 30th, 2008. Once the laughter had settled down, Karen stood up. Campers, another summer has come and gone. While I am saddened by the death of so many, I am pleased to announce that I will be co-teaching at Mr. Weasley's school in order to have a better understanding of the magical world, announces Chiron, and Percy appears rather annoyed. Darn, there goes the poker party that I had planned with my fellow Scythians, says Percy seriously. Everyone looks surprised. We play for candy, but it usually results in a brawl. The teachers don't even know, says Percy. His statement was met with laughter from his fellow campers, as well as Chiron. I am to be the teaching assistant for the Defense Against the Dark Arts, says Chiron, and the sound of a head hitting a table could be heard. Annabeth gives Chiron a set of books that Percy bought when he was in Diagon Alley. Chiron, those were written by the Data teacher, and they have never lasted more than a year, says Percy in all seriousness. I will return during the weekend, campers, and Argus as well as Dionysus, when he returns, shall be in charge while I am away, says Chiron on September 1st, as he and Percy get ready to head for Hogwarts. They arrive as the train arrives. Percy makes his way into the school, and he arrives in the Great Hall before everyone else. As the first years are being sorted, a loud crash was heard from outside, and Percy, as well as Snape and Albus, rush outside, to which they see Harry Potter and Ronald Weasley sprawled on the ground while the car is in flames. Percy summons water from the Black Lake to douse the fire to ensure that there is no disaster. The boys are healed and brought to the Great Hall for dinner. Students, I would like for you all to welcome our new Data teacher, Professor Lockhart, and his assistant, Chiron, says Albus as Lockhart stands up. He gets hit in the face with a splash of water, while Chiron doesn't. Now, why on earth would someone do that to me? Whoever did shall receive detention, says Lockhart. He has to hide his face behind his hand so the students wouldn't see his wet face. Chiron looked at Percy sternly, and Percy didn't even look ashamed. As the school year began, Percy was shown to be a merciless student to Gilderoy. Chiron observed Percy's classes, and he realized that Percy was often ignored by the teachers, as he was rather intelligent. On Halloween, Percy was attacked by his half-siblings because he had constantly refused to even send Molly a letter. She consistently sent him letters, even though he had refused to contact her or Arthur. During lunch that day, the 4 younger Weasley siblings continued to harass Percy, which resulted in 4 loud smacks being heard in the room. Everyone looked at the Gryffindor table in horror as Fred, George, Ron, and Ginny. That is bloody hell enough. You can tell Molly and Arthur that I will never return to the Burrow. I swear on the river Styx that I will never forgive Molly and Arthur unless they apologize to me, says Percy, as thunder could be heard outside of Hogwarts, even though it was a clear and sunny day. Percy refused to speak with the Weasleys after that, and in December of that year, it was the last time that anyone would see him for many months. San Francisco, California, United States of America, June 2008. Percy was running from the Gorgons, and whenever he attacked them, or rather any monsters, they would never stay dead. Percy felt a calling towards the area, and maybe it connected him to Annabeth. The Gorgons have tried to bite, scratch, and claw at Percy, but their claws and teeth always broke. He had woken up 2 months ago outside of a burnt cabin, and he had to get to a mysterious camp, which was a safe haven for demigods. Percy once again killed the Gorgons before sliding down the hill on a snack platter. He landed in the middle of a passing car, and he rolled to the edge of the highway, which was only a short distance. Percy saw an old lady, and she asked him to carry her to the entrance of the camp. She introduced herself as Juno and promised that Percy would get his memories back. He agreed to do so with the hope that he would find Annabeth. Percy carried the old lady, who was heavy in his arms. The Gorgons were slowly catching up to them, and Percy saw the maintenance cell. One of the guards helped him into the camp, while the other held off the Gorgons. Percy, Juno, Frank, and Hazel reached the riverbank. "Go, Hazel, it's my turn to hold them off," says Frank, and Juno tells Percy something disturbing. "The little Tiber, it flows with the power of the original Tiber, river of the Empire. This is your last chance to back our child. The mark of Achilles is a Greek blessing. You can't retain it if you cross into Roman territory. The Tiber will wash it away," says Juno. In the end, Percy decides to cross the Tiber River, and it feels as though he'd been sprayed with acid and then dropped in fire. Percy uses his water powers to save Frank and turn the Gorgons into monster dust. Percy's right pant leg was cut off, which revealed a prosthetic leg, which startled some of the demigods, but none of them made a comment about his leg. The old lady was revealed to be Juno, queen of the gods. Percy felt a hatred for her, but he was unsure why, as he was introduced as the son of Neptune. One of the demigods before him looked shocked, as though she knew him from somewhere. Hazel gave Percy a tour of the camp and met Octavian. He felt as though he had met him before. Percy got to meet the ambassador of Pluto, Nico, and the boy looked surprised to see Percy. Percy had a Roman-style bath, which made him feel great. It would be an understatement to say that Percy was nervous. Percy wasn't scared when he was introduced to the camp. He wasn't even freaked out by the ghosts, as Percy was accepted into the 5th cohort, while the other 4 cohorts thought that the 5th was a joke. Percy thought that they were fine. As the war games were getting ready to start, Percy was teamed up with Frank and Hazel. Frank led the charge, and the trio dominated the battlefield. The trio were the first ones over the wall, and they led the 5th cohort to victory. Gwen was stabbed by a member of the 1st cohort, and she came back to laugh. Then Mars arrived, and he delivered a prophecy. "Go to Alaska, find Thanatos, and free him. Come back on June 24th or die." Percy joined a Senate meeting the next morning, and he said goodbye to the faded orange shirt that he had been wearing, as well as the faded sleep pants that he had been wearing, which were replaced by shorts and an official Camp Jupiter t-shirt. Raina gave him a ring and told him to seek out her sister in Seattle so that acid could be sent to Camp Jupiter in order to ensure the camp's survival. Aid and acid. Raina gave him a ring and told him to seek out her sister in Seattle so that aid could be sent to Camp Jupiter in order to ensure the camp's survival. The questers arrived at their boat, which was falling apart, and when they stopped because Hazel was unconscious, Percy became sick at the sight of a group of Cyclops and a herd of centaurs. Hazel and Percy made an iris message to Raina in order to inform her of the incoming monsters. Raina was surprised to see them, but she accepted the news nonetheless. The group arrived in Portland in order to find Phineas, a blind man who would give them the location of Thanatos. The group meet a friendly harpy named Ella. Ella recited parts of the prophecy that Percy knew. A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds. Using the Gorgon blood, which Frank had grabbed as Percy's trophies, the 2 sons of Neptune drank, and at first it appeared that Percy was dying, but instead it was Phineas. As the group sailed for Seattle, Percy started to remember names and faces. He remembered the names of his 6 half-siblings, as well as the face that he wasn't on speaking terms with, his mortal family, aside from his 2 older brothers. As more of Percy's memories started to come back, he remembered that he attended a magical school in Scotland, and that the headmaster was batshit crazy. Percy also started to remember that he had disappeared when the school was being attacked by an unknown monster. The demigods met Hyla, and she locked Percy and Frank for the crime of being boys. Hazel and Arion saved them. Together they rode off on Arion, and the horse had a potty mouth, but Hazel rode on Arion while Frank, Percy, and Ella were in the chariot. They arrived at Frank's house, and when they left the next morning, Percy drove like a bat out of Hades. Ella didn't join them on the plane that wouldn't take them to Alaska, but he promised that Tyson would find her. "There is another camp, a camp for Greek demigods," said Percy, which surprised Frank and Hazel because they didn't expect that, but also that Octavian could blame Percy for being a spy to the Greeks. Hazel convinced Percy to get some sleep, and in his dreams, that is when he spoke to Tyson about finding Ella and defending Camp Jupiter. When they were in Alaska, Percy fell into a muskeg, and it felt as though he was drowning, which terrified him. "If I die, then I want Bill and Charlie to know that I have always loved them. Well, for the rest, they can go to Hades," thinks Percy, as Hazel and Frank save him. The group arrived at Hubbard's Glacier, and when Hazel was fighting Arconius, Frank was freeing Thanatos, Percy was fighting an army of ghosts. He kept fighting the ghosts, and he had managed to make a hurricane out of ice, snow, and water. When Frank had finally freed Thanatos, Percy used the last remaining strength in his hurricane to sweep the ghosts off of the glacier, and he fell into the water with them. The water carried Percy until he saw the missing stuff from the 5th cohort, and as Percy waited for his friends, Percy spots a phoenix. "Poseidon!" cries Percy, as his beloved flies to him. "Poseidon, can you help to recover some weapons?" asked Percy, as he and his phoenix go under the water. Using a fishing net that he found, Percy collected everything in the net, and his phoenix brought it up to dry land just as Frank and Hazel arrived. "Let's get these weapons to camp," says Percy, as the weapons were tied onto the chariot. Poseidon Phoenix flamed them to Camp Jupiter just as the battle began. Tyson and Ella arrived. The gold is distributed, and Percy used the Legion's eagle and destroyed the monsters with lightning. Then the sound of forklifts and wolves could be heard. "Amazons and hunters, let us fight in the name of the gods," cries Hyla, as the demigods stormed into the camp. "Demigod scum, be prepared to face your death," says Polybotus. Percy gives a member of the 5th Legion the eagle to continue to decimate the monsters, while Percy, who is riding Mrs. O'Leary, charged with Polybotus. Percy saw that the 1st Legion was struggling to fight against a group of centaurs, so Percy summoned water from the Little Tiber River. The water gathered speed and strength as it became a powerful hurricane, which decimated the attackers. "Hunters, help wherever you can," cries Thalia, as she, Bianca, and Percy rush to Polybotus. As he attempts to enter the city, Thalia and Bianca fly volley after volley of arrow at the giant. "Spawn of Poseidon, we finally meet. I am anticipating to spill your blood in the birthplace of the gods," he cries. Percy feels so angry that he strikes Riptide into the ground by the statue of Terminus, and an earthquake strikes. It knocks the attackers to the ground. "Terminus, do something," cries Hazel, as she and the rest of Camp Jupiter make their way to Percy. As quickly as it began, the earthquake stopped, and Percy has his hand pointed towards Polybotus. "Avada Kedavra," says Percy, as his eyes are burning a scary green, as a bolt of bright green emerges from his hand and strikes the giant. Terminus, while he may be a statue, fell on the giant, which helped in his defeat. Percy stumbles as he is rather weak. "I need nectar and ambrosia," calls Bianca, as 2 hunters emerge from the crowd with the 2 requested items. After a few minutes, Percy is back up on his feet, and he is raised on a shield as he was named Praetor. During dinner that evening, Percy sat with Frank and Hazel when Bianca and Thalia came. "Bianca and Thalia, meet Hazel Levesque, the daughter of Pluto," says Percy cheekily. Hazel, my name is Bianca, and I guess we are half-sisters, as I am the daughter of Hades, while Nico is the son of Hades. Thalia is the daughter of Zeus, says Bianca, and dinner provided to be a welcome celebration. After much convincing, Percy stood up and he explained his true background. So, I am the son of Poseidon, and there is a Greek camp. That doesn't mean that the Greeks are going to invade, because Hera had gotten the prophecy started when she switched Jason and I, said Percy. The campers start howling in laughter at that statement. The hunters leave that evening. Bianca and Thalia hug their cousin, but they leave with the rest of the hunters. Hera, or rather Juno, appeared in his dreams that night, and Percy got pissed at her for stealing 7 months of his life. She acted as though 7 months was nothing. I missed my 6th year of Hogwarts. I don't even know if my friends were harmed in the attacks from the monster in the Chamber of Secrets, said Percy, and Juno looked surprised, but she said nothing. As the next morning dawned, Percy, along with Frank and Hazel, were attending the Senate meeting. Percy explained about the Greek camp, and that was when everyone saw a giant ship. Let me introduce you to my other family, says Percy, as he sees long blonde hair in the distance. The demigods of Camp Jupiter were hesitant to welcome the new demigods, but they relaxed after Percy warmly greeted a blonde-haired female demigod. A Sea of Sorrows by Bookshope21. Chapter 10. Mark of Athena / House of Hades / Blood of Olympus. San Francisco, California, June 25th, 2009. As 4 demigods came down from the ship above them, Percy, along with Frank and Hazel, approached them. That is when Percy sees her, with golden blonde hair and bright grey eyes. It's his beautiful wise girl. Percy and Annabeth kiss one another, and it feels as though fireworks are going off around them during bonfire nights. Then Annabeth Judah flipped Percy. The Romans were about to attack, but then Annabeth helped Percy to stand up after making a promise to never leave her again. Everyone goes for lunch. Ella arrives with Tyson and Mrs. O'Leary. She gives a prophecy concerning Annabeth. Wisdom's daughter walks alone. The mark of Athena burns through Rome. Twins snuff out the angel's breath. Who holds the key to endless death? Giant Spain stands gold and pale, won through pain from a woven jail. Percy quickly has Tyson take Ella back to Camp Half-Blood. Leo takes Octavian for a tour of the Argo 2, while Raina and Annabeth go for a walk/talk. Jason and Piper left in order to tour New Rome, which left Hazel, Frank, and Percy. Let's go pack, says Percy, and the trio pack up some clothes while Percy packs all the stuff that he had brought with him to Camp Jupiter. All of a sudden, the Argo 2 starts firing at the camp. Percy, Frank, and Hazel rush to below the ship, and Percy uses his powers in order to keep the crowd back. Percy sees Annabeth, and he helps Piper to get Jason up the ladder. Hazel and Frank distract them, says Percy, as Hazel summons Arion and Frank turns into a dragon. Percy and Annabeth make it onto the Argo 2. They see Leo firing on the camp, and Percy pushes him to the ground as he shouts at Annabeth to go. Frank lands on the deck of the Argo 2 sometime later, as Leo starts to wake up. It is clear that he doesn't remember anything that happened, with the last thing he remembers is a cold feeling running through his body. Hazel arrives on the ship, and everyone splits up in order to get supplies for repairs. Frank turns into a Pegasus, and he flies Percy and Annabeth to pick up Tar, which results in Percy somehow angering a tar monster, and then the group manage to make it back to the Argo 2 while covered in tar. Percy, you've seriously bad luck, says Frank, as Percy helps Frank and Annabeth wash off the tar as the repairs are done. All the demigods have their first meal together. They discussed Ella's prophecy and how Nico was looking for the doors of death. After dinner, Annabeth called Percy's arm before he left to go to his cabin. Percy, we have to do a very important Iris message, says Annabeth, as she and Percy went to her cabin. The lights were on, and Annabeth used a crystal. Percy told her the new words to say. Oh, Felicie, do me a solid and show me Charlie Weasley at Romanian Dragon Reserve, says Annabeth, as a rainbow appears in her cabin. Percy saw his brother just sitting down for lunch. Charlie, cries Annabeth, which causes the aforementioned Weasley to jump in fright. Percy, yo, you're alive, says Charlie, happily, and he looks as though he wanted to hug Percy tightly. Charlie, I'm okay. I was injured while I was missing, and I can do wondrous magic, says Percy, as his brother smiles at him proudly. Percy, that's incredible. Dad won the lottery at the ministry, so in July he's going to take Mum, Fred, George, Ron and Jenny on a trip to Egypt. I received an owl a few days ago, and you are head boy, says Charlie, surprising his little brother. Molly better not compare the twins to me, 'cause that will make him hate me more, says Percy, with a frown. Later, Percy, and remember what Bill and I told you, says Charlie, before Annabeth ends the Iris message. Annabeth makes a rainbow, and the Iris message is for Bill Weasley. The couple found him slumped on a table with his head on a plate of salad. Bill! Screams Percy, which causes his brother to jump out of his seat in fright until he saw the two laughing demigods. Real funny, Annabeth and Percy. It is fantastic to see you, little brother. Mum Flu called me for 12 hours last night, ranting about you. The twins, Ginny, Ron, and how terrible each of you are. She thinks that you ran off to do something ridiculous. Your girlfriend called me to tell... Your girlfriend called me to tell me about finding you and Mum. Just about snapped, says Bill. Percy smiled at his incredible girlfriend. Congrats, Percy. You once again got straight O's. Professor McGonagall has taken to sending me a copy of your marks since your first year. You still will be in your 7th year, although Lockhart tried to claim that he was the son of a Greek god, says Bill. Which god did he try? Asks Percy curiously, and Annabeth was curious as well. He claimed to be the son of Kronos, says Bill, as the couple start howling with laughter. I figured that I would get a reaction from you. I have to go. My lunch break is almost over, says Bill, as Percy ends the call. Percy and Annabeth decide to go to bed, and before they went to bed, Annabeth gave Percy something. My wand? Asks Percy in surprise. Of course, Seaweed Brain, says Annabeth, as she gives him a kiss before going to bed. Percy enters his cabin, and he sees magical pictures of him, Bill, and Charlie, as well as muggle pictures of him and Annabeth. When morning rises, Jason, Piper, and Percy leave to seek out Batches, with Jason and Percy competing with one another to see whose ride would show up first. Blackjack was the first to arrive, and he was happy to see his boss alive. Then Tempest arrives, and the two horses take them to the Topeka line, where they seek Bacchus, searching for Ceres. All of a sudden, Bacchus disappears, and Percy, as well as Jason, become possessed. Percy charged towards Jason, and he knocks the son of Jupiter off of Tempest. All the while, Piper speaks to Blackjack, who throws Percy off of his back and stamps on his head. Blackjack flies Piper, Jason, and Percy back to the ship, and Annabeth is pissed at the horses. When the demigods are having dinner, Piper expels the Eidolon from the three boys and from possession anywhere else on the ship, which made both the boys and the girls happy. The seven flew through the night in order to reach Atlanta, Georgia, and find Farkey. Annabeth snuck into Percy's room, and together they went to the horses' stables. As the couple was talking about Percy's dream, in which he saw Nico in a jar, they fell asleep in the horse stables, which leads to Frank finding them there, and he is terrified at the sight of them sleeping next to one another. While the demigods found it hilarious, their chaperone was pissed. Percy went to the aquarium with Frank and Coach Hedge. Percy and Frank were trapped in a tank by Farkey and his sister, Kato, in order to make them attractions for monsters. It didn't work since the group escaped the aquarium, and they headed for Charleston. Frank turned into a cute iguana in order to escape Chinese handcuffs, which caused everyone to laugh. Percy decided to stay on the ship when they reached the Charleston, because he felt so unclean when he was trapped in the aquarium. Percy and Jason created a massive storm that pushed the Argo out to sea. In order to escape the Romans, and Annabeth had found something that would help her on her quest in Rome. The ship was attacked by a Scolopendra, which Leo and Hazel defeat using Greek fire. Then Frank, Hazel and Leah go missing, and Percy searches for them, knowing that each minute spent searching for them is one less that Nico has to live. The group has to pass Hercules at Gibraltar. Piper and Jason go ashore to meet him, and Hercules provides to be a massive jerk, just like he is in the mythology. Percy hits the immortal demigod with a wave of water, which leaves him with a feeling of joy because he got revenge on the demigod that had hurt Zoe all those centuries ago. As the ship sails through the Mediterranean Sea, Percy takes over watch duty, and he has Annabeth by his side. He tells her about seeing Nico in a jar, and how two giants are talking to a mysterious figure. Percy senses a ship in front of them, and before Percy can tell Leo to stop the ship, the other ship crashes into them, which causes Percy and Annabeth to almost go tumbling out of the bow of the ship. Almost everyone is captured on the ship, and as Chrysaor speaks, that is when Percy makes the connection to Medusa, and how she is his mother. Percy has a sword fight against his half-brother, and with Frank's ability to turn into animals, they manage to defeat Chrysaor, and they sacrifice the treasure in his ships to Bacchus. When the ship reaches Rome, Percy walks Annabeth to meet the god of the Tiber River, and he is worried for his girlfriend. Percy, Piper, and Jason are almost drowned by nymphs, but the three of them use their powers together, and they cleanse the spirits, and enter an underground colosseum. Nico slowly crawls out of the bronze jar. Percy is pissed at Nico for lying to him, but he's also happy that his cousin's alive. Bacchus appears, and he has two satyrs tend to Nico and Piper. With Nico being so weak, Percy is just happy that he's alive. The four demigods are rescued by the Argo II, and Nico's voice is so quiet that Hazel has to lean close to him in order to hear what he is saying. Nico explained how he was in Tartarus, and Percy lost all his anger for his cousin because he had gone somewhere that no demigod had gone before. When they reached Annabeth, everyone was happy that she had found the Athena Parthenos. "Holy Hera, Annabeth, you found the Athena Parthenos," says Percy, as the demigods look at the statue in awe. The cavern that it is in starts crumbling. Leo and Frank rush back to the ship, same with Jason and Piper, in order to secure the statue. All of a sudden, Annabeth is being dragged towards the pit, and Percy grabs her hand as she is being dragged down. Arachne was dragging Annabeth down to Tartarus with her. Percy looks up at Nico, who is holding out his hand, and Percy knows there is no way except for down. The other side, Nico. We'll see you there, understand? Says Percy. Nico's eyes widen. "But lead them there," Percy shouts. "Promise me." I will." Below them, the voice laughed in the darkness. "Sacrifices, beautiful sacrifices to wake the goddess." Then Percy lets go of the cliff, and the two most powerful demigods in centuries fell in Tartarus. They fought together with nothing but one wand and one sword. Question marks. Annabeth point of view. Percy and I have been falling for 9 days, when eventually I spot water below us. "Percy, river," I say as I hold on to my boyfriend tightly. He looks down at the water, and he keeps us afloat. I start hearing about how Percy doesn't love me and that life is meaningless. Percy almost drowned, but I managed to swim us to the river edge. Percy looks at me for an explanation. The Cytus, I say, and Percy looks at me for an explanation. "The river of misery," I say, as I fondly roll my eyes of my seaweed brain. The beach is covered in what feels like broken glass. We have to get to the river Phlegethon, I say, as I look down at all the cuts that we are covered in, knowing that the cuts will get infected. "Sounds like a marathon of hawking spitballs," says Percy, and I give the first genuine laugh in Tartarus. Percy killed Arachne, and I was grateful that he did, because she had terrified me so much. When I faced her, I was terrified that I would end up like the rest of her victims. Percy and I reached the river, and I took a sip from it, but before he could, Percy passed out, and I had to help him drink it. "Spicy," was all Percy could say, and I inwardly smiled, knowing that Percy's humour would keep us going through Tartarus. I remembered when Percy told me about a titan that he wiped the memory of. Bob, says Percy, and I smiled. Percy helped me walk because of my broken ankle. We used our wands in order to climb down a stiff cliff, which helped both of us. We heard voices, and that is when we saw Imposi and our least favourite Imposi, Kelly, who vowed to kill Percy. As Percy and I stood back to back, I told the Imposer that Hecate was on the side of the gods. A shadow fell over us, and I gripped Percy's hand, terrified as to whether or not this was another creature that was going to kill us. It was Bob, and he came from Hades' palace, because Percy had said his name, which made me happy, because we had someone to guide us to the doors of death. Percy and I walked behind Bob. We walked for some time, and we hear a rustling sound, which is revealed to be a saber-toothed kitten, which Bob named Small Bob. Small Bob was a good cat, and very helpful. Soon enough, we reached a shrine of Hermes. Percy and I got a chance to rest, and then food appeared. It was the food that was sacrificed to Camp Half-Blood. I took a napkin and used Riptide, which could become a pen, and I wrote a note for Rachel to give to Raina. I burnt the note, and I prayed to every god that it would arrive at Camp Half-Blood. In a last-ditch effort to slow down the Romans' attack on the camp that I have called home since I was 7. When we were walking, we were attacked by a rat who cursed Percy and I for every monster that we defeated in the name of our survival. Percy point of view. I was attacking the Arai while trying to destroy as many curses as possible. The Arai had told Bob the truth, and he wasn't helping us. I wouldn't blame him, since he's gotten brainwashed by 4 demigods. Annabeth and I had defeated thousands of monsters since we found out that we were demigods, especially with the Titan War last summer. Annabeth and I continued to fight the Arai with our limited vision, when all of a sudden Annabeth cried out, and I can see the milky white of her right eye. She starts to wander away, and whenever I got close to her, then she would move away. Calypso, I thought, thinking of the immortal girl that I had left on Ogygia. And how that gods had once again failed to keep their promise from the Second Titan War. I blame the gods for every one of my problems. It was because of them that Annabeth and I were currently walking through literal hell. We were probably never going to see our families again. I kept attacking as much of the Arai as I could, and I didn't care about the curses. Luke was right. The gods only used us demigods as pawns, and in another 200 years, there may be more demigods would have to go through the same thing as Annabeth and I are going through right now. Without the gods messing up our lives, then I probably would have a normal life with my family. My younger siblings would still hate me, but I probably wouldn't want to leave the wizarding world, and I would get a job at the ministry. As the Arai started to close in on Annabeth and I sank to my knees and I turned towards Bob. I'm sorry, Bob, I say, before the amount of curses overtake me and I start to pass out, but not before seeing Bob destroy the Arai. He heals Annabeth of her blindness, but not for the cutting curse, as that will never heal. I pass out before I can hear what Bob says, but I feel him carry me before I fully lose consciousness. Annabeth's point of view. I felt so sad that I couldn't comfort Percy. Bob was taking Percy and I to a friend of his who could heal any curse known to the gods. We kept walking, that is until we came across an ancient-looking farmer's hut, and said hut's owner was a massive red dragon. It looks as though Christmas was fighting itself. Soon it was safe for Bob and I to enter the hut, and Damison healed Percy. Percy awakened from the dragon's roar, and we continued moving. Percy and I were covered in scars. We were both unsure as to whether or not we would make it to New Rome. Our small group had separated into 2 separate groups as Percy and I made our way to Aklis in order to be shrouded in death mist. We make our way to Aklis, and she appears useless. she appears useless. She told us that it was impossible to cover our scent from the monsters as well as hide our bodies, since we are famous demigods who killed numerous monsters. So I guess your death mist is pretty useless then, I questioned, and Percy looked at me surprised before he saw me smiling. The goddess bared her broken and yellow teeth. Useless? Who are you? A daughter of Athena, I said, sounding braver than I felt. I didn't walk halfway across Tartarus to be told what's impossible with some minor goddess, I say, and the dust starts to quiver at our feet. Atlas didn't like being called a minor goddess, and when Percy asked for 2 orders of death mist to go, she was pissed. She brought forth numerous poisons that she was going to use in order to boil our bodies and make examples of us. She brought us to the verge of final where night meets the void below Tartarus. Then she put the death mist on us, and Percy looked as though he was a skeleton. His skin was sallow, his eye sockets dark and sunken, his handsome hair dried into a skein of cobwebs. He looked like he'd been stuck in a cool, dark mausoleum for decades, slowly withering into a desiccated husk. Achilles attacked us, and while we were slower, Percy used the poison that were around her, and it looked as though he was about to poison her. Do it, Percy. Make her fade, I say, and when he looks at me. He looked shocked, but he did it anyway, because the gods have used us as pawns for far too long. Percy's point of view. Annabeth told me to kill a goddess, and it felt oddly satisfying, just making her echo rise until she became a shelled husk of her former self. Percy, I'm sure that not even your father could control poison, said Annabeth as she kissed me on the lips. We grabbed our bags from where we threw them out of the way of the poison, and we continued on our way. We felt the temperature drop, and the abyss before seemed to exhale. That is when we heard a female voice introduce herself as Night, with the capital N. We looked up, and her chariot looked as though it was made as the same material as Nico's sword, Stygian iron. Her beast's legs turned from smoke to solid as they moved. I smirked at Annabeth. We decided to anger another immortal on our detour. Well, you're Night, I suppose. I mean, I can tell because you're dark and everything. Though the brochure didn't say much about you, comments Annabeth with a straight face. What brochure? Asked Nat, as though we could magically produce one. We had one, didn't we? Questioned Annabeth, and I just nodded my head in agreement. Anyway, I guess the brochure didn't say much because you weren't spotlighted on the tour. We got to see the Phlegiathon, the Cocodus, the Arai, the poison glades of Eklis, even some random titans and giants, but Nyx? No, you weren't really featured, said Annabeth, and I had to give it to her. She's a good actress. Yeah, I said, warming up to the idea. We came down here for the Tartarus tour, like exotic destinations, you know? The underworld is overdone. Mount Olympus is a tourist trap, I say, before I'm cut off by Annabeth agreeing with me. We booked the Tartarus excursion, but no one ever mentioned we'd run into Nyx. Huh, oh well, guess they didn't think you were important enough, says Annabeth, and Nyx lashes her whip at us, which reminds me of the Fury's whips. She and her children attempt to catch us, but they were unsuccessful and holding hands. Annabeth and I jumped into the house of Nat. I used my heartbeat to write my obituary. Percy Weasley died aged 16. Boom, boom. Died of massive injuries while leaping like an idiot into the abyss of chaos and splattering on the entry hall floor of Nyx's mansion. Boom, boom. Survived by his 2 older half-brothers who loved him. Boom, boom. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to Camp Half-Blood, assuming Gaia hasn't already destroyed it. When Annabeth and I hit solid ground, we started running, and I pulled Annabeth back from the edge to keep her from falling to the edge. We reached the banks of the river Acarion, which is the river of pain. I had Annabeth close her eyes as we jumped across the moat. That is when we reunited with Bob and Small Bob. We were approaching the doors of death. I turned to Annabeth as she turned to me. Annabeth, whatever happens, just know that I've always loved you and that you have made these past few years incredible, I say as I give her a kiss. Third person point of view. The two demigods, Titan and saber-toothed tiger, Kitten, made their way to the elevator, which are guarded by Cryos and Hyperion. They insult Tartarus, which results in the primordial absorbing the disrespectful Titans into his armor. Monsters, attack the demigods, cries Tartarus as he causes the death mist that was shrouding Percy and Annabeth to disappear. They had cut the chains and they were getting ready to enter the elevator, but now Percy and Annabeth stood side by side, back to back, in a fight against every monster. Annabeth, let's stick together, says Percy, as he and Annabeth kiss once more before they begin to attack the monsters. There are thousands of monsters, and Percy summons the 5 rivers of the underworld. He directs the water to combine into a hurricane. Annabeth, get behind me, says Percy, as the hurricane reaches its full force. Annabeth holds tightly onto Percy's waist, as the hurricane causes a massacre of the monsters. Hundreds upon hundreds of monsters are decimated in the hurricane, while Demison, Bob, and Small Bob are fighting Tartarus. Get back, shouts Percy, once as he finished decimating the monsters. There are weapons everywhere, but not a single monster remained. Percy collects the weapons in the hurricane, which only adds to the danger of the hurricane. Bob and Demison protect Annabeth while Percy approaches Tartarus. You mortals have done nothing but meddle in the lives of demigods for centuries. You have caused thousands of kids pain and suffering for your own gain. If a demigod was ever born out of pure love for the mortal parents, then that would be a first, cries Percy. Percy surrounds Tartarus in the hurricane, and the primordial is unable to attack the demigod as he is ruthlessly attacked, and Percy shows no sign of slowing down. Percy puts all his hatred and annoyance towards immortals into his attack. Tartarus begins to dissolve, and soon the hurricane dissolves with nothing but Tartarus' armor, sword, and shield remaining. Take these as your trophies in war against the primordial, says Damison, as he and Bob shrink the armor, sword, and shield into smaller pieces. Percy and Annabeth get into the elevator while Bob holds the button. They wave goodbye as they hold the doors closed. They just defeated the biggest monster that they have ever encountered. Percy, we're going to be remembered for centuries, the two demigods who defeated every monster, as well as defeating Tartarus, says Annabeth. Percy looked at the sword with shock, while Annabeth held the shield with hesitation. Soon enough, they had reached the upper world, and they crawled out of the elevator. Their friends were fighting monsters, so Percy cut the chains himself before he and Annabeth sat on the ground, exhausted beyond belief. When Hecate left, she's friendly, grumbled Percy, and that is when everyone saw that they had returned. Hazel and Piper ambushed Annabeth with hugs, while Frank, Jason, and Leo gave Percy hugs. What happened? Asked Nico. We fought a primordial and won, Percy said with a smile. With help from Hazel, Nico was able to shadow travel out of the House of Hades. Raina, Calypso, and Coach Hedge were waiting for them on deck, as Percy and Annabeth are forced to lay down on a blanket, while they are given ambrosia and nectar. The food of the gods stop the bleeding and heals their wounds to an extent. Percy took his portion of the armor out of his bag, while Annabeth did the same with her portion. We defeated Tartarus, Percy and Annabeth say in sync with one another. Everyone looks at them surprised. Percy, you are insane, says Nico to his cousin. Percy and Annabeth take turns telling their story to their friends, who are all amazed at the courage and ingenuity that Percy and Annabeth portrayed in their survival of Tartarus. We also have these, says Percy, as he shows the sword, which was similar to Nico's, with one different detail: it was taller than buildings. Annabeth's shield shined in the sunlight, as though it was made of pure diamond. As Raina, Nico, and Coach Hedge got ready to leave, Percy hopped over to his cousin. Percy thanked Nico for telling Bob that they were good, as well as visiting him. Nico, if I don't make, then tell my uncle that I love him, says Percy, as Nico was strapped in for the journey from Greece to New York. Yogo, too, flew off with 7 demigods and one former immortal aboard to finish their quest at the Pantheon. While 2 demigods and a satyr, Shadow travelled from Euprius to Long Island Sound. All the individuals were hoping they would be successful in their defeat against the primordial goddess of the earth. Meanwhile, in New York, the Pontifex Maximus of Camp Jupiter had a tantrum worthy of any toddler over the fact that no monster would be able to help in the attack against the Greek camp. All of them were afraid to be slaughtered by the infamous heroes Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. Argo 2, Flying Towards Greece, July 2009. It had been a few days since Percy and Annabeth had escaped Tartarus. The 7 demigods and the former immortal came up with a plan for the prophecy in order to ensure that they all survive. It was decided that they would make the physician's cure as well as rebuild Festus. Leah, Jason, Piper, and Percy worked together in order to prepare for the final battle against Gaia. It was shortly after Jason was stabbed the Imperial sword. Percy went to change his bandage and they got to talking about their futures. Man, I'm probably going to remain at Camp Jupiter since I've never known a life outside of it, replies Jason, and Percy frowns as he thinks about Piper. Jason, dude, what about Piper? She told Annabeth that she wants to be a model or an actress like her dad, says Percy. I don't know, man, but I'm probably going to live at Camp Jupiter, says Jason sadly. Dude, my year mates helped to apply for different magical universities, and I'm going to reject them to attend New Rome University. But even so, I'm not sure if I'm even going to be accepted, says Percy. Jason punched Percy in the shoulder. Dude, the applications are given to the Praetor. Raina's going to have you accepted, as well as your friends. Annabeth is going to be attending New Rome with you, says Jason. They look at Percy's watch, which was a gift from Tyson, and it's time for dinner. They go to the dining hall, and it is tastefully decorated since Annabeth and Leah's birthday had passed during the couple's time in Tartarus. It didn't feel right to celebrate the birthdays without the full crew aboard, and it worked out with Calypso creating gifts for Annabeth and Leah, while Hazel, Piper, and Frank decorated the dining hall / baked the cake. In the absence of candles, Leo just lit his fingers on fire for Annabeth to blow out, and he did the same for himself. They continued to have fun with one another, even as the day of their impending doom grew closer. Jason saves Percy after he nearly drowns after meeting his half-sister, who is absolutely destructive with storms. Nike continuously screams in the stables about how the demigods were going to fail and stuff. Soon enough, they arrive in Greece. Calypso uses her powers in order to make the giant immobile. Percy, now! Cries Annabeth, and Percy thrusts Riptide into the ground, causing water to erupt from the ground. Percy summons enough water to fill up a lake, and he uses the fallen pieces of the Argo 2 as weapons. The giants are quickly surrounded by a hurricane of water and weapons. Poseidon sees what Percy is doing, and he joins his son. Soon enough, all of the giants are destroyed, but there is one lone monster that survives the massacre in Tartarus. Let's do it, Annabeth, says Percy, as he takes his sword in its black glory, while Annabeth takes her shield, and they destroy the Hydra. The gods have no time to ask them questions, as camp is under attack. Zeus sends them flying back, and the Argo 2 lands in the lake. The demigods arrive on the battlefield by flying or in Festus. Legion format advance, cries Raina as the Romans get ready for the battle, while over with the Greeks. Greeks, let's fight stuff, says Percy, as the two groups of demigods who had warring for centuries came together to defeat a common foe. Romans and Greeks fought side by side while Leo, Jason, Piper, and Percy worked on Gaia. Piper and Leo distracted her, while Jason and Percy used their powers over the wind and the waves to their advantage. The two boys created a hurricane, which launched a fireball that Octavian had created into the sky, and at Gaia, but not before it pushed Leo and Piper out of the way. The hurricane's force was used to sweep up each and every weapon from a fallen demigod. The weapons in the hurricane smashed and decimated the monster forces that Octavian had hired. At the end of the battle, Piper and Leo were rushed to the infirmary with serious burns, while Jason and Percy were suffering from exhaustion. The four demigods slept for 3 days, and they regained enough energy to be able to move around without much pain. Piper's half-sister, Lacey, helped her to find clothes that would cover her burns, while Chiron informed her father. Tristan came up with a clever lie that Piper and some friends that she had made at an exclusive camp were in a boating accident. She and another suffered burns, while 2 boys were exhausted from keeping them afloat all night. August 18th, 2009, Camp Half-Blood, Long Island Sound. Percy arrives for breakfast that morning, and there are 4 owls waiting for him. 3 of them are from his only friends at Hogwarts, while the last one is his school supply list. Yo, Chiron, can I go and get my school supplies? Asks Percy. You may, Percy, but Annabeth, Jason, and Piper are going with you. They've already asked, says Chiron, and Poseidon flies onto Percy's shoulder, thrilling happily at the sight of his owner. The group was Phoenix Flash to Diagon Alley. Annabeth, Jason, and Piper were staring at the alley with their mouths wide open. Come on, guys, we have to go to Gringotts so I can pay for my school supplies, says Percy, and all of the witches and wizards are looking at the group in shock over the orange and purple shirts. The group exits to the bank, and they go to Flourish and Blots, which cause Annabeth to have heart eyes. Yo, Percy, aren't they your brothers and sisters? Asked Jason. Percy scowled in annoyance when the Weasleys came over to him with Hermione and Harry in tow. Percy, come along. We will get you your school supplies, and you and your so-called friends can return to their supposed camp, says Molly, in a condescending tone. But she took a step back when Percy took a step back. Enough, Molly Weasley. I'm done with you acting as though I am just a child playing make-believe. I'm going to come to the Burrow at the end of the year in order to collect my few belongings. Aside from that, I am never going to spend another night at that Burrow. If I ever have to return to living under the same roof as you, then Voldemort should bloody well be returned, says Percy, before Annabeth gave Percy a dip with a kiss. The groups went their separate ways as the 4 heroes finished up the shopping for their friend. The heroes returned to camp, and Chiron turned it into a game with each cabin helping Percy to pack his trunk. Percy found it hilarious as the Ares cabin got into a tug-of-war with the Athena cabin over the Care of Magical Creatures textbook. By August 31st, Percy was all packed with passing gifts from each cabin, which could be used in either self-defense or as a prank on his twin brothers. Percy was excited to be head boy at Yale, and as he waved goodbye to his friends, Percy was excited for his final year at Hogwarts. It was finally graduation day. Arthur and Molly arrived to congratulate Percy on his graduation, but he just ignored them. Let's go and get my stuff, says Percy, as he, Leo, and Piper mount Pegasi to fly to camp. Frank, Hazel, and Jason have to leave in order to help Apollo complete his trials to regain his godhood. Annabeth left to help her uncle to find her cousin. They met up in Boston, but Magnus was already dead, so Annabeth returned to camp. The trio arrived at the Burrow, and Percy brought them to his shared room. They packed up his books and the few other items that had remained at the Burrow before Poseidon, the Phoenix, flashed them and the Pegasi back to camp. Percy went to find Annabeth, while Piper went to New York for an audition in a musical, while Leo went to Bunker 9 to be with Calypso. Percy, could we go to West Virginia? I want to reconnect with my dad, says Annabeth. Let's go tomorrow. We can take the Pegasi and be back before supper, says Percy, as they packed a light bag before having supper that evening. Percy was happy to have finally left the Weasleys, as they just ruined their own success. In the morning, Percy and Annabeth informed Chiron of their plan, and he allowed it. The Pegasi brought them to the train station, which the couple took in order to come up with a plan. They made their way to West Virginia. They walked up a path that they had last walked nearly 11 years prior. Annabeth noticed 3 painted rocks, with the oldest having a stuffed owl next to it. Annabeth knocked on the door, and a woman opened the door. Yes, how can I help you? Asked the woman. Hi, I'm here to see my dad, Frederick Chase, says Annabeth, as the woman turned around and yelled for Frederick. Yes, Susan, asks Frederick, as he sounded somewhat breathless. She says that you're her father, says Susan in an annoyed tone, and she leaves in order to do something else. Annabeth, says Frederick, as he hugs his daughter, who hugs him back. Come inside, Annabeth. You as well, Percy, says Frederick. Bobby and Matthew, come here, boys, calls Frederick, as 2 identical boys come down the stairs. Yeah, Dad? Asked the boys in tandem. Frederick, my sister mentioned that a girl came to visit, says Helen. Bobby, Matthew? Helen, please welcome Annabeth and her boyfriend Percy Weasley, says Frederick, and Percy took a small step back as Bobby, Matthew and Helen ambushed Annabeth in a hug. Tell what has happened, asks Matthew, as the family sits on the couch while Percy and Annabeth share the love seat. The couple proceed to tell the family about their quests, and Frederick looked horrified at the fact that his daughter fell into Tartarus. Dad, Magnus is just like us, but the son of a Norse god, says Annabeth, and Frederick looks surprised at the news as he remembers his brother telling him about the death of his nephew and their sister before his brother's premature death from an unknown cause. Bobby and Matthew were thrilled to tell Annabeth about how they were doing in school. Soon enough, Percy and Annabeth had to return to camp for dinner and curfew. Annabeth, promise that you will invite us to your wedding, asked Frederick as the couple were heading out of the door. Of course, Dad, and I'll keep in contact, says Annabeth. She gives her dad, brothers, and stepmom one last hug. Percy and Annabeth got married on August 1st, 2015, much to the celebration of their friends and family from Camp Half-Blood, Camp Jupiter, Brooklyn House, and Hotel Valhalla. Bill, Fleur, Charlie, and Victoria were the only Weasleys invited. Molly attempted to crash the wedding, but she was stopped by Clarice and Chris, who were the security guards for the wedding. All of the 7 got married, and they each led successful lives with their partners. Piper became a famous actress, while Jason took care of their children. Hazel opened her own jewelry store, while Frank became a zoologist, and they shared the work of taking care of their kids. Leo and Calypso opened their own repair shop, which became famous across the whole of America. Each of the 7 had 4 kids. The kids shared the same birthday, and when it was time for the kids to attend camp, the 2 campers had returned as one camp. The 2 camps had reunited as one camp, so the kids were still able to explore both their Roman and Greek heritage. Then, in the year 2093, at the age of 100, Percy and Annabeth passed away while surrounded by their great-grandkids and kids. Centuries later, Camp Half-Blood, Athens, Greece. Campers, tonight the Hunters of Artemis shall tell you a tale about the greatest demigod to have ever lived, announces Charon, to the surprise of the campers, as the Hunters of Artemis rarely ever showed up to camp. 2 hunters approached the campfire. They had the symbols of the big 3 on their arm. Tonight we shall tell a tale about a son of Poseidon who saved the world from Kronos, as well as Gaia. This son of Poseidon was blind until Apollo healed him. The son of Poseidon united the mythological world and made so that all of the gods were more connected with the other pantheons, said the black-haired and blue-eyed hunter. A girl from the silent cabin raised her hand. What was his name? Asked the girl. She was a descendant of Poseidon if her blonde hair was a takeaway. She had just returned from her first year at Hogwarts, where her family had attended for centuries. His name was Perseus Achilles Weasley. He was blinded by a curse when he was a year and a half old. His parents abandoned him at my mom's house. I took him when I ran away, and I am grateful that I did, for he saved my life, says the blue-eyed hunter. My ancestor, Charles Weasley, he haunts the halls of my family's house, and he has told me about his brother, Percy, says Victoria Weasley, and the two hunters smiled at her, for she shared the same positivity as Percy. Percy saved my life by finding the golden fleece and bring me back to life after my tree was poisoned. My name is Thalia Grace, and this is Bianca D'Angelo, says Thalia. A clatter could be heard as the demigods see massive armor, which appears to belong to a massive figure. Percy and Annabeth fell into Tartarus. They defeated the primordial Tartarus. As their spoil of war, they were left with his armor, sword, and shield, says Chiron. The campers were impressed at the size of it. Unlike my brats of a half-brother, Percy was kind and caring to all of those around him, and especially loved Annabeth Chase, who later became his wife, says Thalia, as she remembers having to bring her half-brother to camp, and he continuously complained about everything. Perseus acted as though he was the greatest demigod at camp, yet Thalia and the rest of the hunters hardly visited camp because of him and the rest of the male campers. The campfire ended that night, and it was a fire to celebrate the start of a new summer camp. Hello, this is technically present Katie, because this is a re-upload of the entire series done. I cut out my ramblings at the end of them. I just wanted to know what you guys would prefer. Would you prefer I leave the ramblings of the chapters, or I cut them out like this? I don't mind cutting them out, because I don't blame you for not wanting to listen to me talk in between each one. Hope you guys enjoyed this, though. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!